Chapter 195. A small section of thin roots and a main root were two completely different concepts. This kind of common sense, even an ordinary person could distinguish it. Of course, the cultivators were more aware of the differences in the spiritual power contained in it, as well as the differences in the larger functions. The 4 medicinal pills of Yang Chen at the beginning were just experimental products, and the real medicinal pills refined for himself were still behind. This time, Yang Chen's attitude was more serious, and even the refining time was at least twice as long. Of course, the reason for the long time was that refining the main root of the Penglai divine wood was much more difficult than refining a small section of the small root. This step alone took Yang Chen more than a month's time. And this was the result of Yang Chen fully mobilizing the Sun True Fire, and the strength of the main root could be seen. The choice was the best profound yang fruit, the best auxiliary medicine, the thickest main root in the Penglai divine wood forest, and this alone consumed a quarter of the spiritual power of the medicine garden to supplement. Compared with the needs of Yang Chen's foundation stage, it was simply a waste. In 2 months, the final product was a green pill with 3 clear pill marks on it, and it also formed a miniature Penglai divine wood medicinal pill, the 3rd grade divine wood foundation establishment pill. The small flaws in the previous alchemy process, under the careful control of Yang Chen, were repaired a lot and became more and more perfect. Put there, just the pill qi that lingered around the medicinal pill and did not disperse made people see the excellence of this medicinal pill at a glance. After making enough preparations again, Yang Chen sent the perfect medicinal pill to his mouth. The longan-sized medicinal pill melted in his mouth, and in an instant it turned into a familiar aura of the Penglai divine wood that Yang Chen was familiar with, and rushed straight into Yang Chen's lungs. In the meridians, the spirit power of the Penglai divine wood domineeringly merged into Yang Chen's first wood spirit power, and then unceremoniously assimilated the first wood spirit power in Yang Chen's body. This process was not easier than Yang Chen condensing the 3rd fire spirit power with the Sun True Fire. Every transformation of spiritual power consumed a huge amount of spiritual power, and this spiritual power was completely provided by the spiritual power generated by Yang Chen's Yin-Yang 5 Elements Secret Art and the 3rd grade Foundation Establishment Pill. The Yin-Yang 5 Elements Secret Art was running wildly, making up for Yang Chen's first wood spirit power assimilated by the Penglai divine wood. After the aura of the Penglai divine wood began to assimilate enough of the first wood spirit power, Yang Chen began to compete for control with the aura of the Penglai divine wood. To put it simply, Yang Chen used a huge amount of spiritual power to dilute and assimilate the aura of the Penglai divine wood that was condensed to the extreme, and then began to absorb and refine these auras, becoming part of his own Yin-Yang 5 Elements Secret Art. It was also a painstaking effort. Yang Chen extracted a trace of the Penglai divine wood aura that was entrenched in his body, then absorbed and refined it, and at the same time let his meridians adapt to this pure to the extreme first wood spirit power. This process lasted for a full 2 months. When the last trace of the Penglai divine wood spirit power completely turned into Yang Chen's first wood spirit power, Yang Chen once again entered the state of communicating with heaven and earth. This was the 3rd time that Yang Chen had entered this state in this life. The overwhelming spiritual power gathered from all directions into Yang Chen's body, and Yang Chen's first wood spirit power that had just been refined to the extreme was once again supplemented to a stunning level. The process lasted for half an hour. In the ordinary foundation stage, the process of communicating with heaven and earth was completed in just a short moment, but Yang Chen had set a new record this time. The emergence of this vision even made the palace master of Chunyang Palace, who happened to be in the fierce sun courtyard, give up his cultivation and stand outside the room where Yang Chen retreated. Of course, the palace master would not easily interrupt Yang Chen's cultivation, nor would he do anything to interfere with it. Also coming here because of the vision here was Yang Chen's master, Gao Yu. The foundation stage of the first wood spirit power drove the other attributes of the spiritual power in Yang Chen's body to improve wildly. The long-term process of communicating with heaven and earth directly caused the spiritual power in Yang Chen's body to rush to the apex of the peak qi refining stage in just half an hour, and then broke through the critical point. As a result, Yang Chen had to begin to welcome his remaining 7 spiritual powers and build his foundation at the same time. This was a crazy and surprising process. After half an hour of the first wood spirit power communicating with heaven and earth, a larger-scale heaven and earth essence qi riot began to be produced in the retreat room of Yang Chen in the Fierce Sun courtyard. Even when the Jedon stage master condensed his Dan, it did not cause such a big movement. The heaven and earth spiritual power within 100 miles of the Fierce Sun courtyard seemed to have encountered a super black hole and rushed to the Fierce Sun courtyard. So many people who were cultivating in the Chunyang Palace found the abnormality here. Several elder-level characters immediately flew into the air and instantly arrived at the Fierce Sun courtyard. But immediately they found the palace master standing outside Yang Chen's retreat room. Everyone tacitly did not make a sound and quietly landed behind the palace master. These elders were very clear about how many people lived in the Fierce Sun courtyard. Now, almost everyone except Yang Chen and Gong Sunling had already stood on this side. Gong Sunling had already set off to the Immortal falling abyss, so who was inside? These elders did not need to explore with their spiritual awareness to know. The huge heaven and earth spiritual power directly formed a huge vortex over Yang Chen's room, and the lower end of the vortex was Yang Chen. Yang Chen's body at this moment was like a huge sponge, madly absorbing the spiritual power, and then it was refined and purified by the yin and yang 5 elements' secret art in his own body, becoming a part of his own spiritual power. Yang Chen's consciousness had appeared in his own sea of consciousness at this moment. The original sea of consciousness only had a long river of blood, a sun in the sky and the magma under the long river, but now there was a big tree. The roots of the big tree were firmly rooted on the edge of the long river of blood, the long roots even directly extended into the magma below, and the huge canopy was just next to the red sun in the sky. The thick trunk stood upright, forming a bridge connecting heaven and earth. The outline of the sea of consciousness had expanded to the size of 5 Fierce Sun courtyards, and it definitely had a radius of hundreds of acres. Yang Chen stood in the middle, and could even feel the emptiness. The long river of blood also became longer, crossing the entire sea of consciousness, dividing the sea of consciousness into 2 parts. What happened? The people outside Yang Chen's room looked at the continuous phenomenon of the heaven and earth spiritual power and could not help but stare at each other. No one knew what had happened, but everyone had a consensus that this was definitely a good thing. Chapter 196. The communication between heaven and earth lasted for an hour and a half, but none of the onlookers waiting were impatient. Several of Yang Chen's fellow apprentices and those servants were curious about what happened. At the same time, they also took advantage of the opportunity of the crazy concentration of spiritual power here to cultivate a little. The effect was many times better than usual. As for the Chunyang Palace Master, several Yuanying stage elders, and Gao Yu, they were guessing what happened to Yang Chen that would cause such a situation. However, this situation was very familiar to everyone, and they had all experienced it. This was clearly the scene of communicating with heaven and earth during the foundation stage, but at that time, no one had such a big movement as Yang Chen, and no one had lasted as long as Yang Chen. Everyone waited like this, thinking and waiting. The turbulence of the spiritual power of heaven and earth finally began to ease and slowly stop. Everyone was relieved and knew that they had reached the final juncture. The palace master suddenly remembered what Su Qingxin once said to him. It seemed that at the Heaven Stairway gathering, Yang Chen said that he had cultivated the other 5 elements of spiritual power. It was said that it was to feel what the other spiritual power felt like. Moreover, the palace master himself also clearly felt that in addition to the fire attribute spiritual power in Yang Chen's body, there were indeed other attributes of spiritual power. However, at that time, the palace master also listened to Su Qingxin's words and knew that Yang Chen had this experience, and he did make the royal fire like water and royal fire like earth techniques in front of Su Qingxin, so he did not pay much attention to it at that time. However, now that he was communicating with heaven and earth for such a long time, he thought of a possibility. Yang Chen would not have succeeded in building all the 5 attributes of spiritual power, right? When he thought of this, the palace master himself was shocked. At the same time, he cultivated 5 kinds of spiritual power and built his foundation at the same time. How could this be described as a genius? It was more like calling him a monster. How was this possible? If he thought that the master of the Yuanying stage had built his foundation with other attributes of spiritual power, the palace master would believe it, but a disciple who had just built his foundation with fire attribute actually built his foundation with all 5 elements of spiritual power. No matter how strong Yang Chen was, where did he get the time to cultivate? It must be known that Yang Chen's cultivation in the 9 Earth Mountain Villa was famous for being lazy. Even in the Ardent Sun courtyard, if it wasn't for these 2 seclusion sessions, he would be very carefree every day. How was it possible for all 5 elements of spiritual power to be at the foundation establishment stage? But if that wasn't the case, how could the current situation be explained? Palace Master Zhang Jiao couldn't understand, but fortunately, Yang Chen would finish it soon. When he asked, wouldn't all the truth be revealed? The consequence of communicating with heaven and earth was that Yang Chen's yin-yang 5 elemental arts once again entered a balanced state. This was the most comfortable state for Yang Chen, and also the state with the strongest combat power. Originally, he planned to use the profound spirit furnace and the sword sheath with the yin-yang 5 elements secret art to complete all the sacrificial refining of the celestial spirit treasure refining secret art and the earth fiend sacrificial formation secret art, but Yang Chen soon found that there were a lot of people standing at his door. Among them were the head of the palace and his master. Yang Chen also had to open the door immediately. Greetings, Master, greetings, Palace Master, greetings, Elders. As soon as he went out, Yang Chen had no other action except to pay homage to these seniors. Everyone has been patiently waiting for him to pay homage to them, and then they began to observe Yang Chen carefully. Yang Chen's yin-yang 5 elements secret art was now balanced again, and naturally there was a kind of heroic and restrained temperament. It seemed to be a return to nature, but including Gao Yu, they could feel the powerful spiritual power of the 5 elements that flowed silently in Yang Chen's body. Perhaps this spiritual power was not worth their attention in front of these masters, but they had already estimated the current combat power of Yang Chen. Yang Chen, who had just reached the foundation stage and was still in the first layer of the foundation stage, could at least deal with 10 guys in the same realm as him at the same time, and this was still a conservative estimate. It was even very likely that the middle stage of the foundation stage was not necessarily the opponent of Yang Chen. Perhaps only the people in the advanced or peak stage of the foundation stage could fight with Yang Chen. A disciple in the foundation stage had once again surprised them. The head of the palace didn't know what to say, but Gao Yu cared about her apprentice and couldn't help but ask in front of everyone, Yang Chen, what was the matter with your movement just now? Foundation stage? Yes, master. Yang Chen replied respectfully, and for a moment, he had already figured out how to deal with these elders in front of him. You cultivate the spiritual power of the 5 elements at the same time, aren't you afraid of not distinguishing between the primary and secondary? Gao Yu's eyebrows almost became a knot. Since the beginning of the cultivator, she had never heard of a successful cultivator who cultivated the 5 element. There were cultivators, but the final result was very miserable. Everyone knew the benefits of specialization, like Yang Chen, it was unique. This disciple still specializes in the fire attribute, but the other 5 elements of spiritual power automatically upgraded to the foundation stage. This disciple did not expect it. Yang Chun still respectfully answered his master's questions, and also solved the doubts of other elders. You have not specialized in other spiritual power, how can you reach the foundation stage? Gao Yu asked, puzzled. Similarly, this was also the question of the palace master and the elders. Gao Yu asked for them, and it was better for them to lose their manners on the spot. This disciple accidentally refined a foundation stage pill and wanted to try the effect. As a result, it became like this. Yang Chen was still honest to answer. What kind of foundation stage pill? The head of the palace asked in front of Gao Yu this time. As the palace master, he immediately realized the extraordinariness of this. This is the medicinal pill refined by this disciple, please taste it. Yang Chen from the merit ring took the best foundation stage pill with both hands and sent it to the front of the head of the palace. 3-grade foundation stage pill? When the palace master took it, he immediately found the extraordinariness of the medicinal pill and exclaimed on the spot. The scream of the palace master made several Yuanying stage elders no longer care about Feng Yi. All of them gathered around, one by one looking at the foundation stage pill in the hands of the palace master. They could not wait to grab it and observe it carefully. The 3 obvious pill marks clearly indicated the grade of the medicinal pill. There was no doubt that this was a 3rd-grade medicinal pill, but was there a green one for the foundation stage pill? What a strong wood spiritual power, what is this? The palace master who held it in his hand immediately felt the wood spiritual power contained in the medicinal pill, and whispered, Fusang wood. Qingyang wood? No, it's not so strong, is this? Penglai divine wood? Boom, several elders no longer had the reservation of a Yuanying stage ancestor. Like an outbreak, they all screamed out loud. Chapter 197. Penglai divine wood, this almost legendary thing, would actually appear in a medicinal pill? How was this possible? Several Yuanying stage elders could not wait to grab the medicinal pill to see what it was, but due to the identity of the head of the palace, they did not do it so much, but they had already surrounded the head of the palace. Foundation establishment pill, even if it was the 3rd-grade foundation establishment pill, for these Yuanying stage masters, the significance was not very great. They had already built the foundation for many years. At most, Yang Chen could refine the 3rd-grade foundation establishment pill. He could be regarded as a very talented alchemy disciple in the sect, and he would be vigorously cultivated. But Penglai divine wood was different. It was something that could refine the most powerful flying sword. If it happened to be a wood cultivator, it was simply one of the best magic weapons in the mortal world. However, this kind of thing was too precious. Even the palace master could not determine that the aura on this medicinal pill was Penglai divine wood. He had only ruled out a few high-grade wood-type materials and came to this conclusion. After the head of the palace looked at it, the medicinal pill was passed in the hands of a group of Yuanying stage elders. After everyone carefully identified it one by one, no one could be sure that the pure wood attribute aura was not the legendary Penglai divine wood. Yang Chen, what kind of material is the wood aura in it? After everyone had seen it, the palace master motioned everyone to come to the meeting hall of the Fierce Sun courtyard. It was really inappropriate for the elders to stand in the small courtyard of Yang Chen. After sitting down, the palace master asked, I don't know. Yang Chen directly told a lie with his eyes open. I just happened to encounter a small piece of wood, which has a strong wood spirit power, so I tried to refine this wood spirit power into the foundation establishment pill. I did not expect it to succeed in one try. What about the wooden strip? The palace master asked a little eagerly, and then immediately realized his gaffe, slowed down, and then said, Is there anything else? Although the other Yuanying stage elders did not speak, they were also looking forward to Meng Han, waiting for his affirmative answer. That's all we have left. Yang Chen was going to say no, but he changed his mind. He took out a finger-thick branch of the Punglai divine wood from the medicine garden, and then put it in the hands of the head of the palace. There is a finger-sized one broken. I used it to refine medicine. This. Palace Master Zhang Jiao took the green branch and felt the wood attribute spiritual power that was stronger than the medicinal pill. His fingers even began to tremble. Several elders also focused their eyes on the hands of the palace master for the first time, and they refused to move their eyes away. Even if he held it in his hand, the head of the palace was still not sure that this was the Punglai divine wood. He needed everyone to observe and identify it before he could give an answer. After all, this kind of thing was a legend. How many people had seen it with their own eyes? Even the old mountain god was deceived, let alone mortals like the head of the palace? The small branch was passed in the hands of several elders, but the eyes of the head of the palace had shifted from the Punglai divine wood to the 3 grades foundation establishment pill in front of him, or it could not simply be called the 3 grades foundation establishment pill, but it should be called the 3 grades divine wood foundation establishment pill. 3 grades foundation establishment pill. Looking up, the palace master looked at Yang Chen, and his lips seemed to be a little dry. Is this refined by you? It was refined by this disciple. Yang Chen certainly would not deny it. This was the guarantee of his own status in Chunyang Palace. How could he not recognize it? The head of the palace was the head of the palace. After the excitement of getting the Punglai divine wood branch, he immediately began to think about the affairs of Chunyang Palace. And what could make him happier than a potential disciple who could refine the 3 grades foundation establishment pill and could refine the Punglai divine wood? This was not counting the fact that after Yang Chen took the 3 grades divine wood foundation establishment pill, he actually built the foundation of all the 5 elements of spiritual power. Such a powerful medicinal pill, there was no need for more. If Yang Chen prepared one for every outer sect disciple, what kind of scene would Chunyang Palace be? Even Zhu Chentao, the veteran 3rd-grade alchemist master of the Jedon stage, was not sure that he could successfully refine the 3 grades foundation establishment pill. The Qi-seeking pill had more than doubled the number of outer sect disciples in Chunyang Palace, and the news of the successful refining of the heaven-seizing pill had made the number of new disciples received by Chunyang Palace several times more this year. Now the 3 grades foundation establishment pill could almost certainly let the people at the peak of the Qi refining stage build the foundation. All of this was related to Yang Chen. Could it be that Yang Chen was the deputy general of Chunyang Palace? It had to be said that Yang Chen's appearance had indeed confirmed this fact. The earth vein of the fierce sun courtyard, the Punglai divine wood, the heaven ladder to the top, and the 200,000 5 elements spirit essence, any one of them, if placed on a disciple in the foundation establishment stage, would be unbelievable, but these were all facts that had already happened. The more he thought about what happened to Yang Chen, the more satisfied the palace master felt, and at the same time, he hated Chu Heng who suppressed Yang Chen more. For Liang Xiaoming of the Bright Moon Palace, there was also a little more dissatisfaction. How long does it take you to refine this kind of 3 grades foundation establishment pill? The palace master picked up the pill again and looked at it repeatedly in his hand. At this time, he found that in addition to the wood spiritual power in the pill, there was also a very large spiritual power. This spiritual power was so powerful that even the palace master was a little surprised. The 1,000-year-old mysterious yang fruit was a pill refined by the 3 grades, and all the auxiliary medicines were more than 1,000 years old. Of course, it was full of frightening spiritual power. But the palace master did not know and just attributed it to the 3 grades foundation establishment pill. This kind of pill containing the wood spiritual power will take at least 8 months. Yang Chen played a trick and doubled the number. If it is a simple foundation establishment pill, it will also take 4 months. Yes. The palace master listened to Yang Chen's answer and nodded. This time was not very outrageous, but it was also unacceptable. After thinking about it, the palace master asked another related question. What if it is a second grade's foundation establishment pill? That's simple. Yang Chun did not hide anything on this and honestly replied, 1 month is enough. After listening to Yang Chen's answer, the palace master hesitated for a long time and did not speak, but his eyes looked at the Penglai divine wood that was exchanged back and forth between several elders. Yang Chun. After a long time, the palace master seemed to have figured out something and called Yang Chun. This disciple is here. Yang Chun quickly promised. This branch, hand it over to the sect, are you willing? Looking at the branch of the Penglai divine wood, the palace master used a tentative tone, completely discussing the tone. This disciple is willing. Yang Chun replied directly without thinking. Since it was taken out, it was to be handed over to the sect. Yang Chun would not refuse. Chapter 198. As for this medicinal pill, the palace master held Yang Chen's 3 grades divine wood foundation establishment pill with 2 fingers. He thought about it and said, also give it to the sect and let Hall Master Zhu study it. Yes. Yang Chun did not have any dissatisfaction at all. He took it out and did not think about taking it back. If he didn't come up with some real materials, how could Chunyang Palace pay more and more attention to himself? The sect will not accept your things for nothing. The palace master looked at Yang Chen's eyes and slowly asked, if you have any requirements, just put them forward. If the sect can meet them, it will never be stingy. Several elders had stopped observing the Penglai divine wood and were all listening to the words of the palace master and Yang Chun. When the palace master proposed to let Yang Chun make a request, none of the elders had any objection. Obviously, the things that Yang Chun took out this time were enough to make these elders, even Elder Lin, who had the most opinions on Yang Chun, had nothing to say. There were disputes within the sect, but this did not mean that everyone would give up the development of the sect because of this. A genius disciple like Yang Chun had constantly brought them surprises. Now even the legendary Penglai divine wood was selflessly taken out. If they had any opinions, it would be purely a needle in a needle. Several elders could cultivate to the Yuanying stage. If they couldn't even see this, then they would not be elders. Moreover, from the possibility that Yang Chun might help them one day refine the heaven-seizing pill, there would be no opinion. Whether it was public or private, there was no reason to object. This disciple wants to know, the last time the palace master said that he wanted to negotiate with the Taishanmen, what was the result? Yang Chun did not make a request, but asked a question first. This question was closely related to Yang Chun, because Li Qingchen of the Taishanmen and Chu Hung found people to kill Yang Chun. At that time, the law enforcement hall palace master was furious and asked Su Qingxin to negotiate. The Taishanmen apologized to Yu and Chunyang Palace for the heaven stairway. The palace master did not expect Yang Chun to ask this. He was stunned for a moment before replying, the Taishanmen have removed Cheng Wenkai from all duties in the sect, and voluntarily compensated Chunyang Palace with the 2 quotas for the Heaven Stairway gathering next year. In addition, for the 19 Jidan stage masters who plotted against you when you were climbing the Heaven Stairway, all the sects involved have also compensated. The palace mistress attached great importance to this matter, so she was very clear about the details. There is a flying sword, 16 different kinds of pills, an alchemy furnace, and a piece of undying wood. The palace master attached great importance to this matter, so the details were very clear. There is a flying sword, 16 kinds of medicinal pills, an alchemy furnace, and a piece of immortal wood. I received a reply not long ago. You are still in retreat, so the sect agreed on your behalf. As for Li Qingchen sending people to kill you, the palace master paused and seemed to want Yang Chun to be mentally prepared. The Taishanmen mean that this is a personal grievance between you and Li Qingchen. The Taishanmen will not come forward to protect you. You can find Li Qingchen at any time to solve this personal grievance, and the 2 sect will not interfere. Are you satisfied with this? Satisfied, Yang Chen was certainly satisfied. The Taishaman not only had to bear the loss of 4 Jedon stage masters, but also had to apologize and give up the quota. This kind of apology could be seen by the whole world. How could Yang Chen not be satisfied? Even if Yang Chen could not get any substantial benefits, Yang Chen was also very satisfied, not to mention that there were still a lot of things to get. A small Qinquan bag appeared in the hands of the palace master. It was obviously filled with the compensation, but he did not directly hand it to Yang Chen. Instead, he asked, "The sect took your things. Naturally, they will not take it in vain. What conditions do you want?" "I will follow the arrangement of the palace master." Yang Chen immediately retreated and left everything to the palace master to decide. Obviously, if the palace master did not come up with some enough benefits, his own master ancestor, Gao Yu's master, Elder Wang Yong, would not agree. This also showed that he was not greedy for rewards and left a better impression on the upper echelons of the sect. "The Penglai divine wood is really rare. In that case, I will give you a few choices." The palace master did not push Yang Chen. He was used to giving orders and had his own bearing. After a little thought, he immediately had a solution. "You are a fire cultivator. The pure yang true fire collected by the Chunyang Palace for generations cannot be passed on to outsiders except for the sect master or the elders. I will grant you the identity of a true disciple and give you the pure yang true fire. Or, I have a black flame crystal stone in the Chunyang Palace. Although it is not as precious as the Penglai divine wood, it is also a fire attribute treasure. It is the best material for refining the flying sword. The insufficient part can be made up with spirit stones. You can choose these two." Hearing the words of the palace master, Yang Chen was overjoyed. The palace master even allowed him to choose between the pure yang true fire and the black flame crystal. For Yang Chen, did he still need to consider? This disciple chooses the pure yang true fire. Almost without thinking about it, Yang Chen chose the pure yang true fire. It must be known that this was a higher level of fire than the true sun fire. Only the core fire cultivators of the Chunyang Palace had a chance to get involved, and only a chance. The pure yang true fire was overbearing. Even the masters of the Yuanying stage were not necessarily able to absorb and refine it. In the memory of Yang Chen in his previous life, there was almost no pure yang true fire in the mortal world and the spiritual world. Only some fire cultivators in the immortal world would occasionally have a few. It was also rare and very rare. In the Chunyang Palace, only the founder had the pure yang true fire, which was also the origin of the name of the Chunyang Palace. No disciple of the younger generation had refined it. Later, the Chunyang Palace was destroyed, and the fire of the pure yang true fire was destroyed by the palace master at the last moment. From then on, there was no pure yang true fire in the mortal world. In his previous life, Yang Chen was not qualified to touch the pure yang true fire. Even if he was qualified, he did not have the strength to refine it. But in this life, this opportunity was placed in front of him, which made Yang Chen overjoyed. You have to think about it. The palace master seemed to have a glimmer of hope for Yang Chen. After the founder, no one had refined the pure yang true fire. In the Chunyang Palace, it had almost become a decoration. Yang Chen's level of fire control was obvious to all. Maybe he could inherit the pure yang true fire and develop the pure yang great way. Looking forward to it in his heart, the palace master still reminded Yang Chen, pure yang true fire may not be able to refine it until you ascend. As long as you reach the Jedon realm, you can refine it. Do you still want to choose the pure yang true fire? This disciple chooses the pure yang true fire. Yang Chen replied firmly again, regardless of the elder's raised eyebrows and the anxious eyes of his master Gao Yu. Good. The palace master stared at Yang Chen for a while. After confirming that Yang Chen was not joking, he turned his hand and a square transparent box appeared in his hand. The box was covered with various talisman formations. Through the transparent box, a dazzling white light group filled the whole box, constantly flashing. Chapter 199. Together with the original Qiankuan bag, plus the box that was sealed with the pure Yang True Fire, the head of the palace solemnly handed it over to Yang Chun. After Yang Chun respectfully received it, the palace master waved his hand, and a spiritual light directly entered Yang Chen's sea of consciousness, but it was a set of mnemonic techniques used to open the seal of the pure Yang True Fire. The third-grade alchemist master in the early stage of the foundation stage, Yang Chen, I look forward to the day when you refine the pure Yang True Fire. This sentence, the head of the palace did not have any false elements in it, it was completely sincere expectation, however, this pure Yang True Fire, you can only keep it for up to 300 years. When the time is over, it will automatically return to the secret pavilion of my Chunyang Palace. You have to hurry up. This disciple will do his best not to let the palace master and the elders down. Yang Chun immediately expressed his determination. In his heart, he was glad that he had just decisively taken out a branch of the Penglai divine wood. If not, he didn't know how long it would take for him to get in touch with the pure Yang True Fire. That is, the head of the palace in Chunyang Palace could open the secret pavilion of the Chunyang Palace at any time and anywhere and take out the fire from it. It seemed that the palace master was very assured of Yang Chen, and even the control method was also taught. It must be known that without this method, even if Wu Xiong was here, he would not be able to open the seal. After the reward was finished, the questions were also solved. The head of the palace had newly obtained the Penglai divine wood. He did not stay in the council hall at all. Together with several elders, he found a place to study the small branch of the Penglai divine wood. If it could survive, maybe in addition to the pure Yang True Fire, Chunyang Palace might also have a kind of wood divine object. Wang Yong stayed. When the head of the palace called him, he waved his hand and refused. The old man is a fire cultivator. This Penglai divine wood and I have no fate. I still have to guide my grand disciple. This was reasonable. Everyone did not say much and let Wang Yong stay by himself. Gao Yu and Yang Chen still respectfully served Wang Yong. After everyone disappeared, Wang Yong slapped the table and complained to Yang Chen, "Kid, did you not see my hint or what? How can you choose this pure Yang True Fire? This disciple just wants to try if this disciple has this blessing." In the face of his own master ancestor, Yang Chen did not dare to be presumptuous. He has always maintained that kind of respectful attitude and answered questions in the same way. Blessing? Wang Yong was stunned, but he did not immediately refute Yang Chen. Apparently, he thought of Yang Chen's actions over the years. It seemed that Yang Chen was really a person with great fortune. Otherwise, how could he immediately find an underground spiritual vein that was not inferior to the main vein of Chunyang Palace, and climb the heaven ladder and refine the heaven-seizing pill with the strength of the Qi refining stage? These were not things that a person without a blessing could do. Well, it's good to try. After thinking this through, Wang Yong nodded and didn't dwell on this issue. If you miss out on the black flame crystal, then so be it. At most, when your cultivation is higher, you can refine a few high-grade pills in exchange. It's just a pity that in alchemy, this old man and you can't give you too much guidance. For the alchemy level of his own grand disciple, even Wang Yong had to admit defeat. Although Wang Yong was also a fire cultivator, he, like Gao Yu, focused on fighting, focused on refining, and was not proficient in the direction of alchemy. Yang Chen, at a young age, could refine the third-grade foundation building pill in the foundation building stage. He was definitely a genius. This pure Yang True Fire, maybe Yang Chen really had this opportunity. Yang Chen did not have much contact with his master ancestor Wang Yong's previous life. After Yang Chen was apprenticed, Wang Yong had already begun to retreat to the Deshang stage. Until the incident in Chunyang Palace, Wang Yong failed to break through. In order to protect his apprentice, he finally died with a Yuanying stage master of the enemy, which was a pity. Since Yang Chen had been reborn, he naturally would not let these tragedies repeat themselves. Although Wang Yong's words were not much, his intention to protect was very obvious. Yang Chen could certainly feel this kind of care. However, Yang Chen also knew that Wang Yong's care was more for Gao Yu. After all, Wang Yong and Yang Chen did not have much contact. He just loved the house and its crow. For Yang Chen, Wang Yong protected Gao Yu, which was the greatest kindness. Listening to Wang Yong's words, Yang Chen immediately said, "Thank you for the care of the ancestor. Your apprentice will work hard and never let down the expectations of the ancestor." After thinking about it, Yang Chen decided to give Wang Yong more confidence. His arrangements in Chunyang Palace had already made some progress. Now that there was the ancestor in charge, naturally some things would be easier to arrange. "Ancestor, this apprentice's apprentice, please restrict the surroundings. Next, this apprentice's apprentice doesn't want others to know," Yang Chen said to Wang Yong very seriously. The expression on his face was very solemn. Even Gao Yu had never seen Yang Chen with such a cautious expression. Wang Yong was stunned and frowned, but still didn't say anything. With a wave of his hand, a restriction came out. "Okay, I have already restricted this place. If you have something to say, you can rest assured." "Not enough, Master Ancestor." Yang Chen shook his head firmly. It seemed that he did not give Wang Yong face. "It's a big deal, Master Ancestor, at least 9 restrictions." "Yang Chen!" Gao Yu immediately shouted loudly. Wang Yong was Gao Yu's master. Did Yang Chen even worry about him? Yang Chen's words made Wang Yong curious. What kind of secret needed to use 9 restrictions to ensure that it would not be leaked? Staring at Yang Chen's eyes for a while, the momentum of the Yuanying stage ancestor was also indirectly released, lightly pressing Yang Chen. But Yang Chen seemed to feel nothing and shook his head stubbornly. "Not enough, Master Ancestor." "Good." Wang Yong was serious by Yang Chen. With a wave of his hand, more than a dozen restrictions sealed the meeting hall where the 3 of them were located. After doing all this, Wang Yong sat in his seat and stared at Yang Chen. "Okay, it's impossible to not disturb the palace master. I know the content of our conversation. What do you want to say? Say it." Yang Chen did not directly open his mouth, but took out the jade box that Wu Xiong had given him from the merit ring. He held it in both hands and placed it on the table beside Wang Yong. "What is this?" Wang Yong asked in horror. On the box, there were talismans and formations made by a master of the Deshang stage, which made Wang Yong, a master of the advanced Yuanying stage, feel a burst of fear. What kind of thing needed such a seal? It seemed to be comparable to the restriction that sealed the pure Yang true fire. "Master Ancestor, this box has a total of 9 layers. Each layer has the same powerful restriction seal." Yang Chen pointed to the jade box and said, "This is the seal made by Elder Wu Xiong himself. What is sealed inside is the heaven-seizing pill." Chapter 200. Heaven-seizing pill? Not only Wang Yong, but even Gao Yu on the side exclaimed at the same time. Even if Wang Yong was already a Yuanying stage ancestor, his state of mind had reached the state of not changing even if Mount Tai collapsed in front of him, but he couldn't help but exclaim, and his voice was trembling, "Is this the heaven-seizing pill that was refined for Elder Wu Xiong? You actually refined 2 of them?" Wang Yong couldn't help but lose his composure. Even Wu Xiong, a master of the Deshang stage who was about to ascend, would turn pale in the face of the heaven-seizing pill, let alone Wang Yong, a mere Yuanying stage ancestor? The first thing that came to Wang Yong's mind was that Yang Chen refined more than one heaven-seizing pill. Otherwise, Elder Wu Xiong would use one himself. Where would the extra heaven-seizing pill come from? Gao Yu on the side had already been shocked. This kind of powerful thing made Gao Yu unable to believe everything she saw and heard. No wonder Yang Chen had to be so cautious. If it was Gao Yu, not to mention the 9 layers of restrictions, maybe she would directly ask for 18 layers. The excessive shock even made Gao Yu directly lose the ability to speak. She stood in the same place, dumbfounded, and could no longer make any movements. Yang Chen seemed to have been mentally prepared. When he saw it, he directly rushed to Gao Yu's side and held his master's shoulder with both hands. He slowly helped Gao Yu to sit on the chair next to him, separated from Wang Yong by a table, and in the middle was the huge jade box. Wang Yong didn't care about the arrangement of the master and apprentice sitting opposite to each other. His eyes had already been attracted by the jade box containing the heaven-seizing pill, and he couldn't move away for half a second. Until the two people were in a daze for at least a stick of incense, Yang Chen coughed softly and woke up the two people who were in extreme shock. 2 heaven-seizing pills were refined, right? As soon as he woke up, Wang Yong eagerly asked Yang Chen, is it? Master Ancestor, how can there be 2 heaven-seizing pills? Yang Chen smiled bitterly and explained helplessly, if 2 can be refined at a time, then this heaven-seizing pill is too ordinary, right? Then, how about this one? Wang Yong's face was already filled with fear. He did not even dare to say the obvious truth. This is the one we refined for Elder Wu Xiong. Yang Chen nodded and said it very clearly, positively and clearly to ensure that Wang Yong and Gao Yu could understand it clearly. Then why is it in your hands? Hearing Yang Chen's exact answer, Wang Yong and Gao Yu's first reaction was not that they had picked up a big bargain, but as if they had caused a great disaster. Their voices trembled as they spoke at the beginning. Elder Wu Xiong no longer needs this pill, so he gave it to me. Yang Chen's gentle voice seemed to have a magic power to calm people's hearts. Of course, the content of these words made Wang Yong and Gao Yu, whose hearts had almost hung in their throats, slowly calm down. Heavens! Gao Yu slumped in the chair regardless of her image. I was almost scared to death by you, you guy. Wang Yong, who was opposite to Gao Yu, did not seem to be much better than Gao Yu. The sweat on his head dared to come out at this time. A drop of sweat fell to the ground. Wang Yong did not seem to be aware of it. The heavy breathing made people unable to believe that this was the breathing of a Yuanying stage ancestor. Wang Yong took a few deep breaths and recovered some spirit. The first thing he did at this time was not to immediately ask Yang Chen what was going on, but immediately on the basis of the dozens of restrictions that he had originally arranged. He did not know how many layers of restrictions he had set up, until a Yuanying stage ancestor felt tired. He stopped. Why did Elder Wu Xiong give it to you? Why doesn't he need it? After doing all this, Wang Yong moved his eyes from the jade box to Yang Chen. Looking at the calm and composed grand disciple in front of him, Wang Yong suddenly had a feeling that he could not see through him. A junior in the foundation stage could actually refine the heaven-seizing pill that only a master of the Deshang stage would use to ascend. Everything was like a dream. Because this heaven-seizing pill is not a perfect heaven-seizing pill. After Yang Chen said this sentence first, he began to slowly tell Wang Yong and Gao Yu about what happened at the time of refining the heaven-seizing pill. In particular, after the heaven-seizing pill failed to cross the pill tribulation and Wu Xiong replaced it, he realized the power of the wind tribulation in advance. The fact that Elder Wu Xiong was full of confidence in ascension also made the two understand that this heaven-seizing pill was no longer essential to Wu Xiong. So it appeared in the hands of Yang Chen. Of course, the bet with He Lianyun for the fire seed, Yang Chen did not let it go. Hearing that He Lianyun, a Yuanying stage ancestor, even wanted to embarrass Yang Chen, a junior in the Qi refining stage at that time, even Wang Yong began to curse out loud. He could not see where this ancestor was like a Yuanying stage ancestor. He was clearly a village old man who protected his child. The refining process of the heaven-seizing pill, the ups and downs, Gao Yu and Wang Yong listened with relish. When the later pill tribulation appeared, Wang Yong even began to impatiently ask what the situation of the fire tribulation was like at the time of the pill tribulation, and his excitement was overflowing. Please forgive this disciple for being presumptuous. Yang Chen's right hand stretched out and reached Wang Yong's forehead, but his left hand reached out to his master Gao Yu. Wang Yong was stunned and suddenly understood that Yang Chen was planning to put the situation in his memory into his spiritual awareness, so that he could feel the process at that time through Yang Chen's memory. At the moment, no matter how much he did not pay attention to his image, he directly put his forehead on it. Wang Yong did this and Gao Yu also followed suit, sticking his forehead to Yang Chen's hand. The scene when the pill tribulation occurred reappeared in Wang Yong and Gao Yu's spiritual awareness. Fortunately, after Yang Chen's foundation, his sea of consciousness suddenly changed, and he could support such a way to let others see the scene he wanted others to see. This was the technique of the spiritual world. Even Deng Ya and others could only comprehend the situation at the time, but could not share it with others. Wang Yong, who was excited, did not care about this small detail at all, and was immersed in the process of the pill tribulation. Thunder tribulation, fire tribulation, wind tribulation, the scene of the arrival of the three disasters was fully presented in the two people's spiritual awareness, as if it happened in front of them. Even Wu Xiong's final process of blocking the wind tribulation was not missed. Yang Chen had already retracted his hand. Wang Yong and Gao Yu were still immersed in the scene of the pill tribulation and could not extricate themselves. Yang Chen didn't make a sound to disturb them, quietly waiting for the two to wake up. After a long time, Wang Yong woke up from that kind of contemplation. His face was full of joy, and he took a long breath. So that's the case. This can save me at least 100 years of hard work. Chapter 201. Gao Yu also awoke from her contemplation under Wang Yong's happy sigh, and she also benefited a lot. Just the process of the pill tribulation had given her a more intuitive understanding of the three disasters. This would be extremely beneficial for her future tribulations. Wang Yong didn't know how to describe his own grand disciple now. Just met, he gave a surprise to the head of the palace and a group of elders. Penglai Divine Wood, 3 grades of Divine Wood Foundation Pill, 3rd grade Alchemist Master. Now there was a Heaven-Seizing Pill and the Pill Tribulation of Heaven-Seizing Pill. Penglai Divine Wood needn't be asked, it must have been given by Wu Xiong. Otherwise, how could Yang Chen, a disciple of the Foundation stage, have such means to get it? Wu Xiong generously gave the Heaven-Seizing Pill to Yang Chen. Obviously he would not care about the trivial Penglai Divine Wood. But that little branch of the Divine Tree was very important to the Pure Yang Palace. If it could be cultivated successfully, after hundreds of years or even thousands of years, the Pure Yang Palace would have another kind of treasure. Yang Chen, this Heaven-Seizing Pill, what are you going to do with it? After Wang Yong settled his mind, he realized that Yang Chen must have a purpose for taking out this Heaven-Seizing Pill, and it would not be as simple as telling him. He didn't wait for Yang Chen to speak and asked directly. This showed that he was very eager, but the Heaven-Seizing Pill had already made him confused. Master Ancestor, although this Heaven-Seizing Pill is not a perfect Heaven-Seizing Pill, it is still possible to increase the chance of ascension by 70%. Yang Chen slightly groaned, organized the words, and said, "This Heaven-Seizing Pill, I and Master can't use it in a short time. This disciple wants to give it to Master Ancestor." "Give it to me?" Although Wang Yong had already guessed some, when Yang Chen really said it, Wang Yong was still very excited. This was the Heaven-Seizing Pill, the refining of the medicinal pill even needed to cross the tribulation. Was it given to him? This was not a dream, right? The Ancestor is also about to reach the Yuanying stage. As long as he is steady, with the impression of the pill tribulation, it should be easy to enter the Deshang stage within 100 years. When the time comes, with this Heaven-Seizing Pill, even if Grandmaster transcends the tribulation and ascends, you will have 70% more confidence. Yang Chen said in a seemingly unintentional manner. Grandmaster doesn't have to worry about this disciple's filial piety. The speaker seemed unintentional, but the listener seemed to suddenly understand something. Yang Chen's words made Wang Yong suddenly realize that his recent mentality was a little impetuous. No matter what the reason was, Wang Yong wanted to quickly attack the Deshang stage. This kind of anxious mentality was the biggest heart demon. Realizing that there was a problem with his mentality, for Wang Yong, a Yuanying stage ancestor, he immediately knew how to solve it. It was easy to say that it was to adjust one's mentality, but it was not so easy to do. The more powerful an expert was, the harder it would be for them to extricate themselves from a dead end. However, Yang Chen now gave the heaven-seizing pill to Wang Yong, which meant that as long as Wang Yong could reach the Deshang stage, he would have at least a 70% chance of ascending. According to Yang Chen's words, with the experience of watching the pill tribulation, this chance could reach as many as 90%. Even the Yin fire tribulation of the Yuanying stage to the Deshang stage was more than 80% sure. Now that there was such a certainty, Wang Yong did not have to rush to take some risk. Naturally, he could relax his mind and cultivate step by step. That is, according to Yang Chen's words, not only was the Deshang stage hopeful, but his ascension was also imminent. Good child. Wang Yong suddenly sighed with emotion. After praising Yang Chen, he laughed. I thought that I had been trapped in the realm of the Yuanying stage in my life. Now your words, let me see the hope of ascension. Good. Suddenly putting down the devil in his heart, he suddenly felt refreshed, and Wang Yong also showed a rare relaxed smile. Yang Chen certainly understood what was wrong with Wang Yong's cultivation in his previous life. Now he only relied on a heaven-seizing pill to avoid the tragedy of Wang Yong in the future. It was absolutely worth it for Yang Chen to exchange a medicinal pill for a master in the future, not to mention that this master was still Yang Chen's master ancestor. Of course, Yang Chen also had selfishness. The improvement of Wang Yong's cultivation also meant the improvement of his status in the sect. With the improvement of Wang Yong's status, it was even more difficult for others to point fingers at Gao Yu and Yang Chen. From top to bottom, Yang Chen had to weave a protective net for Gao Yu in Chunyang Palace, so that she would no longer have to worry about it in this life. This heaven-seizing pill, you can also use it in the future. Are you really willing to give it to this old man? After Wang Yong laughed, he suddenly asked with some exploration. He wanted to know Yang Chen's current thoughts. What was he thinking? Master Ancestor, if I say something disrespectful, please forgive me. Yang Chen also smiled and said to Wang Yong. As soon as he finished this sentence, he was reprimanded by Gao Yu. Yang Chen, don't be rude to Master Ancestor. You say it, just say it. Wang Yong waved his hand and stopped Gao Yu's scolding. He was in a good mood now and didn't care about these words of Yang Chen. When Yang Chen said this, he wanted to know what this disrespect meant. This heaven-seizing pill is just an incomplete heaven-seizing pill. At best, it has 70% effectiveness. Yang Chen was not afraid of Wang Yong's anger, and said directly with a smile, Master Ancestor's cultivation is high, of course, he doesn't care about this 70% effectiveness of the heaven-seizing pill. When Master reaches the Deshang stage, I will refine a perfect heaven-seizing pill for Master. If Master Ancestor hasn't ascended at that time, you can't be jealous. When Wang Yong and Gao Yu heard this, they looked at each other and couldn't speak anymore. Now the two remembered that Yang Chen seemed to be a little guy who had successfully refined the heaven-seizing pill. When his cultivation was enough, maybe he could really refine a complete heaven-seizing pill. The two didn't know that if Yang Chen was really willing, a higher-level medicinal pill than the heaven-seizing pill was just a thought of Yang Chen. Good. Wang Yong praised again, and then sighed, I originally planned to guide you, but I didn't expect to be guided by you in turn. Well, Master Ancestor, I will accept your heaven-seizing pill with a thick face. With that said, He carefully put the jade box into the Qiankuan bag, but he was not polite at all. Master. Gao Yu was a little reluctant when she saw it. In front of Wang Yong, she made a little girl's appearance. You just took the filial piety of your grand disciple. You don't say to give your grand disciple any benefits? She began to ask for benefits for Yang Chen. Ha 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 ha. Wang Yong was happy and laughed. The new disciple is really protective. Well, of course, Master Ancestor can't take your things for nothing. What do you like in this Qiankuan bag? You can choose at will. Chapter 202. Wang Yong's Qiankuan bag was placed directly on the table for Gao Yu and Yang Chen to take. In Wang Yong's eyes, no matter how precious the things in the Qiankuan bag were, they could not be more precious than his own ascension. Anyway, they were his disciples and grand disciples, and he would not let outsiders take advantage of them. He simply let them choose for themselves and take whatever they liked. Gao Yu shouted and grabbed Wang Yong's Qiankuan bag. She sat on the chair and began to rummage through it with a smile. She still said with a smile, I have been interested in a few things of Master for a long time, but Master has been stingy and refused to give them. Now I finally have a chance. In front of Wang Yong, Gao Yu seemed to still be the playful little disciple whom Wang Yong loved. Yang Chen stood not far away with a smile on his face, looking at Gao Yu's happy smile. The kind of heartfelt joy of finding a long-cherished good thing made him feel that everything he had done was worth it. As long as he could make his master's face smile like this, Yang Chen was willing to pay anything. Gao Yu had already chosen a few things that she had long coveted, and then threw the Qiankuan bag into Yang Chen's arms. Yang Chen, choose quickly. There are not many times when your grandmaster is generous. Wang Yong was watching with a smile, and he was not angry because of Gao Yu's words at all. When the Qiankuan bag was in Yang Chen's hands, Wang Yong's eyes also looked over. It seemed that he wanted to see if Yang Chen knew what was good and what he would pick out. However, the things that Gao Yu chose made Yang Chen very speechless. All of them were related to the fire attribute, so that Yang Chen could not help but want to remind her in Gao Yu's ear, Master, you have the full value of the acquired water spiritual root. Why do you choose these fire attribute things? Although he criticized in his heart, Yang Chen had no intention of being polite to the Qiankuan bag that his grandmaster sent over. As soon as he opened his divine awareness, he immediately found a Qiankuan bag, which had been refined by an expert. There was the mark of Chunyang Palace on it. Compared with the Qiankuan bag that Yang Chen had taken at the beginning, it was much better. He didn't know who Wang Yong intended to use it on, but since Yang Chen saw it, it wasn't up to Wang Yong. Taking out the Qiankuan bag with one hand, Yang Chen beamed with joy and said, This Qiankuan bag is good. It's several times better than mine. Grandmaster, I got lucky. Seeing that Yang Chen had taken a cosmos sack from the beginning, Wang Yong was also startled. He immediately remembered that Yang Chen's original one had already been taken as evidence, and Yang Chen was still using the inferior cosmos sack that he had obtained after killing that guy. Wang Yong decided to be kind to the end. He stretched out his hand and said, Give it to me. Give me all the Qiankuan bags you got from killing people. I'll help you fuse and refine them. Don't let anyone steal my sect's pure Yang real fire from the Qiankuan bags. With Wang Yong's words, Yang Chen was even happier. It seemed that everyone had a cosmos sack, but everyone's was different. Those refined by an expert were not at the same level as those distributed by the sect. Not to mention the size of the storage space, just the degree of firmness of the cosmos sack was different. If some strong materials were added in the refining process, the quality of the cosmos sack could be improved. Of course, if a Grotto Heaven-level magic weapon could be added to the refining process, it might be possible to refine a high-grade product like the herb garden in Xiangyang Mountain. If it was to be integrated with an Immortal's cave, it would be even more amazing. 2 cosmos sacks could be integrated, or at least the space of the 2 cosmos sacks could be combined. That was why Wang Yong asked Yang Chen to take out the cosmos sacks that he got from killing people. However, when he saw Yang Chen take out more than 20 cosmos sacks in succession, even Wang Yong was speechless. Especially when a few of the cosmos sacks had the obvious marks of Taishanmen and Tianquan's sect. It was even more shocking. Are you a cultivator or a killer? Gao Yu couldn't help but frown. Although she knew that Yang Chen had killed a few killers, she didn't expect that there would be so many. Killing too many people will harm your Dao heart. Do you understand? When you killed these people, did anyone else know? Wang Yong, the nascent Soul Realm Grand Elder, was open-minded. There was no direct contradiction between cultivation and killing. Wang Yong just picked out a few cosmos sacks with marks and asked, but he was still afraid of bringing trouble to Yang Chen. No one knew when I killed people, but it's hard to say if anyone would know when these people came to find me. To put it bluntly, Yang Chen didn't have any enmity with these people. They must have been ordered by someone to find trouble with Yang Chen. At least the person who ordered them knew, but there was no definite evidence. That's good. If someone asks, just pretend not to know. Wang Yong stretched out his hand and put all the cosmos sacks together with the one that Yang Chen picked. I'll go back and help you refine it. I'll give it to you in a few days. I understand, Grandmaster. I don't know anything when asked. I understand. Yang Chen smiled and continued to explore the things in Wang Yong's cosmos sack. He didn't even raise his head. A few high-level medicinal materials, a few materials that could enhance the power of the fire attribute flying sword, and a jade slip, which recorded Wang Yong's refining experience, were also found by Yang Chen. There's such a good thing? When Gao Yu saw it, she stretched out her hand. Yang Chen, you haven't been filial to your master since you became his disciple. Take this as filial to your master. After saying this, she seemed to feel a little embarrassed and added, this fierce sun yard doesn't count. It doesn't belong to me alone. Yang Chen looked at Wang Yong and then at Gao Yu. He could only carefully read the contents of the jade slip with his divine sense. Then, he helplessly handed it to Gao Yu and began to mutter, snatching things from your disciple. Take it as filial to your master. Moreover, won't your master pass it on to you in the future? Gao Yu grabbed the jade slip and checked it with a smile. At the same time, she lectured Yang Chen so that he wouldn't be dissatisfied. Wang Yong sat on the side and watched Gao Yu bully Yang Chen. He was happy and smiled without saying anything. His disciple and grand disciple had given him a new concern. In the future, in the sect, he would support them and speak up to ensure that they wouldn't be bullied. Now, there was nothing to be afraid of other people knowing about their conversation. Wang Yong had already begun to remove his restrictions one by one. Yang Chen, what plans do you have after building your foundation? After Gao Yu waited for Yang Chen to finish choosing things, she asked with concern, do you plan to cultivate in the sect or go out to gain experience? I plan to go out to gain experience. Yang Chen quickly replied, I heard that the traitor, Chu Heng, has disappeared in the desolate sand valley. The people from the law enforcement hall haven't found him. I want to settle the score myself. Chapter 203. The contradiction between Yang Chen and Chu Heng has been going on for a long time, and it has been a well-known thing in Chunyang Palace. However, now almost everyone was partial to Yang Chen, and no one said a good word for Chu Heng. In any case, colluding with outsiders to kill his fellow disciples was an irrefutable fact. No one in any sect would allow this kind of thing to happen. Even the demon sects were the same. Therefore, it was not surprising that Yang Chen wanted to find Chu Heng to settle his grievances. The head of the palace had said that after the punishment according to the sect rules, Yang Chen could also settle a private account with Chu Heng. Now that the law enforcement hall could not find Chu Heng's whereabouts, Yang Chen went to find it himself, and no one would say anything. Gao Yu wanted to say something, but looking at Wang Yong's expression, she did not speak after all. She just looked at Yang Chen with a complicated look, and there was a hint of worry in her eyes. After this secret talk with Wang Yong and Gao Yu, Yang Chen had almost set up a big backer for Gao Yu and herself in Chunyang Palace. Once Wang Yong entered the Deshang stage, not only would the strength of the entire Chunyang Palace be greatly improved, but the status of Gao Yu and Yang Chen would also rise. Both Wang Yong and Gao Yu knew that it was of great importance, so the two had already decided to keep their mouths shut about the heaven-seizing pill. They would never disclose half a word to outsiders. Even Wang Yong's other apprentices would not know. Making a fortune in silence was always the king's way. Once it was known, it was likely that the Chunyang Palace sect would split internally. Chu Heng was also a master in the middle stage of the foundation stage, and he had been in the foundation stage for many years. After going to the desolate valley to hone his skills, who knew how much he had grown now? Even several foundation stage disciples of the Law Enforcement Hall and a Jedon stage master did not catch him in the desolate valley. His power could be imagined. To say that Chu Heng's disappearance was not because he was killed by the monsters in the desolate valley. It was a bit shameful to say that he actually escaped under the joint attack of 4 Law Enforcement Hall disciples. Although he did not dare to fight back and hurt people, it was already a heavy slap in the face of the Law Enforcement Hall, and also a slap in the face of Chunyang Palace. 4 Law Enforcement Hall disciples were actually unable to stop a traitor. If word got out, it would really be a little shameful. Therefore, neither the palace master nor hall master Meng Xian of the Law Enforcement Hall talked much about this matter. It was just that Du Qian secretly mentioned it to Yang Chen, but it was also vague. He didn't say what had happened at the time, nor did he say who the 4 Law Enforcement Hall disciples were. In short, there was only one conclusion. Chu Heng had escaped and was declared missing. Of course, Yang Chen would not spare his mortal enemy, Chu Heng. Although Chu Heng was no longer in Chunyang Palace and was unlikely to suppress Yang Chen again, Yang Chen knew that some people, including Chu Heng's master, Bright Moon Temple Master Liang Xiaoming, were still somewhat dissatisfied with the sect's treatment of Chu Heng. If these people colluded with Chu Heng, they might bring trouble to Yang Chen. Even if the trouble in the future was not mentioned, Chu Heng's previous actions were enough for Yang Chen to kill him. In this life, Yang Chen was not as kind as in his previous life. If people respected him, he would respect them tenfold, but if people wanted to kill him, he would kill them. Wang Yong did not object, Gao Yu did not object, and others naturally would not object. Whoever jumped out at this time was simply going against the whole Chunyang Palace. What's more, Yang Chen did not tell anyone except Wang Yong and Gao Yu. This matter had become a shame for Chunyang Palace. All the Foundation establishment disciples of the Law Enforcement Hall were called back to be drilled crazily, and several law enforcement elders of the Gold Core realm went out in person to search for Chu Heng's whereabouts. Of course, Yang Chen went to kill Chu Heng under the guise of erasing the sect's shame. Since Chu Heng escaped from the barren sand valley, Yang Chen's first stop was certainly the barren sand valley. No one would know that Yang Chen went to the barren sand valley for other reasons besides chasing after Chu Heng. The barren sand valley was a famous place for training. In addition to some ferocious demonic beasts, there was another characteristic. The earth's spiritual power in the barren sand valley was very strong. Generally, only earth elementalists and wood elementalists whose 5 elements restrained earth would go there. Chu Heng's water attribute was restrained by the earth's spiritual power. At that time, he was sent here as a punishment. Yang Chen knew the reason why the barren sand valley was like this. There was a vein of earth element true essence there. If this earth element true essence was refined with the earth element true secret art, it would be the best earth element cultivation method, which was also the ultimate goal of Yang Chen's ideal Great Yin and Yang 5 elements cultivation method. It just so happened that Yang Chen obtained a earth element true secret art among the immortals of the heavenly court. If he wanted to cultivate the earth element true secret art, He must at least reach the foundation establishment stage, and he must have the coordination of earth element true essence. Now that Yang Chun had all the attribute spiritual power in the foundation establishment stage, he had the conditions to cultivate it. Among the great Yin and Yang 5 elements secret art, Yang Chun had obtained the first wood true secret art, second wood true secret art, fourth fire true secret art, fifth earth true secret art, seventh metal true secret art, 10th water true secret art, and third fire, 6th earth, 8th metal, and 9th water. Collecting all 10 parts of the great Yin and Yang 5 elements secret art was also Yang Chen's goal in this life in the mortal world. Although the remaining 4 parts were not in Yang Chen's mind, he knew that several sects had these kinds of cultivation method. What Yang Chen had to do was to get them one by one according to the degree of difficulty. Speaking of which, the barren sand valley's earth element true essence was the easiest to get for Yang Chen now, so it was naturally ranked first by Yang Chen. Others would only think that he was going to kill Chu Heng, and no one would doubt it. Of course, even if he wanted to leave, he would not leave immediately. Having just successfully built the foundation establishment stage, Yang Chen had to consolidate for a period of time. Moreover, the latest sacrificial refining of the heavenly spirit treasure refining secret art and the earth fiend sacrificial formation secret art originally only had the sacrificial refining of the fire attribute. This time, he had to sacrificial refine all his magic weapons. Now that Yang Chen's Yin and Yang 5 elements spirit power has all reached the foundation establishment stage, Yang Chen could all start to cultivate the high-level cultivation methods that he found in the scriptures pavilion. After Yang Chen replaced the remaining 6 low-level cultivation methods with high-level cultivation methods one by one, another month had passed. After doing all this, Yang Chen began to sacrificial refine the profound spirit furnace and the sword sheath immortal beheading blade. After the foundation establishment stage, everything was different from the chi refining stage, and the spiritual power in the body had almost undergone a qualitative change. After the profound spirit furnace and the immortal beheading blade were sacrificially refined by the heavenly spirit treasure refining secret art and the earth fiend sacrificial formation secret art, the Yin and Yang 5 elements spirit power was finally balanced again. Walking out of the retreat room again, he met his master Gao Yu. This time, Gao Yu's spirit was much better, and there was an unprecedented confidence on her face. Maybe it was the effect of Yang Chen's previous arrangement. This is the Qiankuan bag that your master ancestor refined for you, take it and try it. Gao Yu felt that after Yang Chen came out of seclusion, she came to wait for Yang Chen. When she saw him, she smiled and threw a belt-like thing to Yang Chen. Chapter 204. Wang Yong had definitely spent a lot of effort to refine the Qiankuan bag for Yang Chen this time. Because of the last Qiankuan bag, Yang Chen was even chased by a group of people, so Wang Yong would never allow this kind of thing to happen again to his own grand disciple. Together with the high-level Qiankuan bag that Wang Yong had prepared for someone, Wang Yong combined all the more than 20 Qiankuan bags handed over by Yang Chen together, and then he did not hesitate to throw in a lot of materials, changing the previous bag style, and directly refining it into a belt. In addition to the function of the Qiankuan bag, the belt was also a good protective magic weapon. On the belt, Wang Yong engraved 3 formations. One was a protective formation, one was an illusion formation, and the other was a concealment formation to hide one's whereabouts. On the buckle of the belt, there was also a place to insert a spirit stone. As long as a spirit stone was put in, it could maintain the spiritual power needed by the 3 formations. In addition to the protective formation, the other 2 could be activated according to the will of Yang Chen. The entrance of the Qiankuan bag was the most convenient place for Yang Chen. As long as his mind moved, it was very convenient to put or take things out. As for the space, it was at least dozens of times larger than the Qiankuan bag that Yang Chen first got, and it was even better than Wang Yong's Qiankuan bag. What surprised Yang Chen the most was that this Qiankuan bag had become a magic weapon, which could only be used after Yang Chen sacrificially refined it. Moreover, unless it was sacrificially refined with a special method, otherwise, even if someone grabbed this Qiankuan bag, it would be impossible to get anything in the Qiankuan bag, unless the other party's cultivation base was at least a big realm higher than Wang Yang's current realm, at least a master of the Deshang stage, to be able to break this restriction. Although Yang Chen had a merit ring, all the important things were placed in the merit ring, and he did not have to worry about the things in his Qiankuan bag. But this Qiankuan bag gave Yang Chen the best excuse, so that he did not have to explain why his things were hidden so tightly. This protective belt magical treasure with the function of a Qiankuan bag could also be upgraded after Yang Chen refined it. Yang Chen now has the profound spirit furnace for alchemy and the immortal beheading blade for attack. He only lacks a magic weapon for self-defense. Just in time, this belt appeared like charcoal in the snow. It could be seen that Wang Yong had guessed Yang Chen's family background for a long time before making this decision. Yang Chen was very grateful for his grandmaster's kind intentions. "You're going to hunt down the traitor. I should be going with you to take care of you." In front of Yang Chen, Gao Yu still put on the face of a master, and said to Yang Chen seriously, "But your grandmaster said that your path is different from ours, and too much care may restrict you a lot. You're the most suitable person to go this time. Master won't be going with you. You're on your own." Gao Yu's words were more inclined to admonish. Yang Chen could feel that there was now a closeness between him and his master, perhaps it was because they shared a big secret. However, when Gao Yu spoke, she was always evasive, and he didn't know what she was hiding. Yang Chen, who was familiar with everything about Gao Yu, immediately noticed this abnormality. "Master, is there anything wrong with this?" Yang Chen asked with a frown, his eyes staring at Gao Yu's eyes, waiting for her answer. Gao Yu was a little uneasy under Yang Chen's gaze. After a moment of uneasiness, she simply gritted her teeth and said, "This time, the 4 disciples of the law enforcement hall chased Chu Heng, but they were all seriously injured by him in the barren sand valley. The head of the palace strictly ordered that it should not be leaked, but the news has been widely publicized by Chu Heng." Looking at Yang Chen, her eyes evaded again. "He also said some ugly words related to you. This disciple is listening." Hearing Gao Yu say this, Yang Chen was no longer so uneasy. It turned out that she was just worried about him, so there was no problem. As for Chu Heng, hurting the disciples of the law enforcement hall was already a capital crime. Yang Chen would not care about a guy who was doomed to die. Chu Heng claimed that it was not Chunyang Palace who expelled him from the sect, but he took the initiative to betray the Chunyang Palace. Since Gao Yu started to say it, she no longer hid anything. Anyway, what should be known would be known by Yang Chen. It was better to hear it from her mouth than from others. "He said that our Chunyang Palace accepted an executioner as an apprentice and has fallen into the devil's path. He was ashamed to be associated with us, so he took the initiative to betray the sect." "What's so ugly about it?" Yang Chen laughed. If it was only to this extent, not to mention Yang Chen, Chunyang Palace could treat him as a joke. He also said that 4 disciples of the law enforcement hall could not do anything to him in the barren sand valley where he was restrained. Chunyang Palace has long been full of maladies and has an undeserved reputation. Gao Yu shook her head and continued, "He also said that you, a guy who did chores for several Yuanying realm alchemists, dared to covet the credit and falsely claimed the reputation of refining the heaven-seizing pill. You are a treacherous person with glib words. Everyone in Chunyang Palace was deceived by you and scolded you as a villain. Chu Heng is a traitor. What else can he say? Master, you don't have to worry about this, do you?" Yang Chen listened and laughed again. Chu Heng, a master of Zhuji realm, could also do this kind of childish scolding. If Yang Chen cared about this, he might as well consider where he could find this guy and cut off his head with a knife. He said that as long as the law enforcement hall doesn't kill him this time, he must kill us, the two despicable and shameless master and disciple who colluded with each other, with a sword to correct the world. Affected by Yang Chen's calm tone, Gao Yu's tone also relaxed. Even when she said that she was also called despicable and shameless, she said in a joking tone, "Even I accepted you as a disciple, it became a trick to gain fame by impersonating others. Chu Hing dares to say that you are despicable and shameless, master?" To Gao Yu's surprise, Yang Chen, who was originally calm, suddenly became furious when he heard Chu Heng's words, which she didn't care about. His eyes almost instantly widened into the size of copper bells, and he gnashed his teeth and spat out a few words. "He dares to insult you, master." Boom! Yang Chen's anger broke out wildly at this moment. Master was Yang Chen's reverse scale. Even if Chu Heng said that Yang Chen's words were unpleasant, Yang Chen would not care. But Chu Heng dared to insult Yang Chen's master. This was unforgivable. The 5 elements of Yin and Yang arts circulated wildly along with Yang Chen's anger. The originally peaceful 10 streams of spiritual power suddenly turned into 10 angry dragons that swam through his meridians. Yang Chen's eyes suddenly turned blood red, and a terrifying aura that was about to devour someone flashed before Yang Chen forcibly suppressed it. "Chu Heng!" Yang Chen's angry voice rang out so loudly that almost the entire Ardent Sun courtyard could hear it clearly. "If I don't kill you, I am not human." Chapter 205. Originally, Yang Chen had thought of going to the desolate sand valley to kill Chu Heng as an excuse and cover. But now, Yang Chen wholeheartedly wanted to kill this guy. There had never been a moment when Yang Chen wanted to kill Chu Heng so badly. Chu Heng dared to insult his master. 100 deaths would not be enough to atone for his crime. Gao Yu had never seen Yang Chen angry, and she didn't know that Yang Chen was so terrifying when he was angry. In her opinion, since Yang Chen was calm when Chu Heng insulted him, he shouldn't be so angry. But she didn't expect that a simple insult to Yang Chen would drag Gao Yu into it and cause Yang Chen to be so angry. However, Yang Chen being so angry because of Chu Heng's insults made Gao Yu feel an indescribable sweetness in her heart. Apart from Master Wang Yong, Gao Yu hadn't felt this kind of love and care from others in a long time, especially when Yang Chen didn't care when he was insulted, but she was indignant when she was insulted. Although the desolate sand valley was called the desolate sand valley, it wasn't a small valley. In fact, the desolate sand valley was a huge hilly area, and most of it was made up of sand dunes. In this area, which was thousands of miles in radius, the earth attribute spirit power stood out, and the other attributes of spirit power were all invisibly repelled. It wasn't that there weren't any, but they were very rare. The scenery here was a vast expanse of desolate sand. Looking around, there were only sand dunes and more sand dunes. The entire desert was abnormally dry, and when the wind blew, it would cause dust to fill the sky. It was already a month later when Yang Chen's figure set foot on this land. During this time, Yang Chen first refined the belt, and then went to find the 4 law enforcement hall senior brothers who had been seriously injured by Chu Heng to thoroughly understand what had happened. It felt like things were more than 10 times more serious than what Yang Chen heard from Gao Yu. Chu Heng seemed to deliberately make Chunyang Palace lose face, and he used Yang Chen's name to belittle Yang Chen. At that time, he had the opportunity to kill the 4 disciples of the law enforcement hall, but he did not kill them. He just seriously injured the 4 people and even arrogantly asked a few unknown rogue cultivators to send them back to Chunyang Palace. What was even more outrageous was that not only did they publicize it all the way with great fanfare, but they also asked Chunyang Palace to pay a few rogue cultivators who sent them back. This was definitely a slap in the face of Chunyang Palace. The entire cultivation world had regarded this as a joke. The disciples of Chunyang Palace had been unable to raise their heads outside recently. It was not that they did not send masters to hunt him down, but Chu Heng was very cunning. Several gurus of the law enforcement hall in Jindan stage had almost turned the barren sand valley upside down during Yang Chen's closed-door training for a year, but they did not find Chu Heng's whereabouts. There was no trace of Chu Heng in other places, as if his whole person had disappeared from the world. Even a fool would not believe that there was no help behind the scenes. This matter obviously happened after Chunyang Palace asked Taishaman and other sects to account for Yang Chen's mistake in climbing the heaven ladder. At that time, several major sects gave compensation and admitted their mistakes, and then Chu Heng's matter happened immediately. There could not be such a coincidence in this world. But in any case, as long as they did not find Chu Heng to enforce the sect rules, there was no way to erase the shame that Chu Heng had smeared on the face of Chunyang Palace. Not only Chunyang Palace, but also Yang Chen and Gao Yu had been laughed at by fellow Taoists everywhere during this period of time. Chu Heng dared to insult his master and his sect. If the slander against Yang Chen was counted, Chu Heng had completely forced Yang Chen into a corner. In this case, if Yang Chen did not stand up for Chunyang Palace, the reputation of Chunyang Palace would plummet. No wonder Wang Yong did not let Gao Yu follow him and said that Yang Chen was the most suitable person to solve this matter. Chunyang Palace had concealed the news from Yang Chen during the year when he was in closed-door training to refine elixirs and to break through to the Zhuji realm. It had clearly expressed their intention to protect Yang Chen. From the palace master to the servants, everyone knew about this, but they had always let Yang Chen cultivate with peace of mind. How could Yang Chen ignore the great expectations of his sect? Puff! Yang Chen's foot stepped heavily into the sand at the top of the dune. Standing on the top of the highest dune in sight, Yang Chen began to look around. From Chunyang Palace, Yang Chen flew on his flying sword, but when he arrived at the boundary of the desolate valley, he gave up flying sword and walked into the desolate valley step by step. The sand dune under his feet was also the one that Yang Chen spent 4 days walking from the edge of the desolate valley to here. The description of the 4 law enforcement disciples reminded Yang Chen of a special formation. In fact, it was simply impossible for Chu Heng, a guy who was restrained by the earth attribute spiritual power of the desolate valley, to defeat the siege of 4 law enforcement disciples. But this strange thing happened, and even the 4 law enforcement disciples felt it was a little unbelievable. Yang Chen asked about the situation at the time in detail. Adding up the contents of the 4 law enforcement disciples' recollections, Yang Chen had a general idea in his mind. Now that he walked step by step, it was to prove Yang Chen's guess. After a few days of walking, hundreds of kilometers, Yang Chen's powerful spiritual sense had already felt the direction of the spiritual power underground, which was in line with his guess. At some point in time, a huge formation had been set up in the huge desolate valley of sand. This formation was so huge that it was impossible to use spirit stones to activate it. It could only take a long time and cleverly use some natural terrain and the direction of the earth vein to slowly activate it. It was impossible to set up such a formation without spending more than 500 years. Moreover, the preparation work before the formation required a person with at least the same level of spiritual sense as Yang Chen. Using Yang Chen's current method, they had to clearly understand the terrain of the entire desolate valley and the direction of the spiritual power. It was unknown how much effort it would take. Since this formation had been successful, it could be slowly activated, and at a specific location, Chu Heng would not be at a disadvantage against the 4, or even seriously injure his opponent. Without the help of this formation, it would be impossible for that idiot Chu Heng to reach such a level in 1,000 years. In his previous life, Yang Chen did not pay much attention to the desolate valley. In this life, because the great Yin-Yang 5 elemental secret art's 5th earth true art needed the 5th earth true essence here to cultivate, he was so concerned. As for the huge formation hidden in the barren sand valley, it seemed to have only one main function, and that was to force the 5th earth true essence from all directions to gather in a certain small area, so that it could be easily refined. After thoroughly understanding the role of this formation, Yang Chen's face also showed a smile. This matter seemed to be getting more and more interesting. Chapter 206. The truth seemed to have revealed the tip of the iceberg. No one knew how a certain sect found this fifth earth genuine essence and wanted to take it for themselves, but the fifth earth genuine essence was too scattered, so it could only be slowly gathered in this way. Moreover, it was a large sect. It was impossible for a small sect to do such a thing. Not to mention anything else, the number of masters at the level of Yuanying realm needed to set up the formation should not be less than 3. How could a small sect have such a foundation? Not to mention that the person who set up such a huge formation was definitely a formation master. There were only a few sects that could manage such a formation, including the sects of those Jedon masters who made things difficult for Yang Chen in the Heaven Ladder. The biggest suspect was, of course, Yang Chen's old rival, the Taishaman who Chu Heng tried to curry favor with. They were also the biggest sect that admitted their mistakes and compensated for the mistakes of the Heaven Ladder at that time. On one side, they admitted their mistakes and gained a reputation of being open and aboveboard. On the other side, they did such a thing through Chu Heng, which constantly tarnished the reputation of Chunyang Palace. Comparing the two, the onlookers immediately made a judgment. The open and aboveboard would naturally win more cheers and support, while the tarnished would lose their reputation and future because of a small disciple. The most important thing was that if no one knew the cause of this formation, then as long as this vein of fifth earth genuine essence was refined and the formation was destroyed, even if an almighty immortal came, it would be impossible to find the trace of a large formation that once existed here. This was originally a large formation based on the natural terrain. When it returned to nature, who had evidence to prove what had happened? Others just used this formation conveniently, but Chunyang Palace was splashed with dirty water. Even if Chu Heng was rescued later and the sect rules were enforced, this reputation still could not be washed away. Others did not fall behind, only Chunyang Palace and Yang Chen had to bear a big black pot. It was a pity that Yang Chen came. A few days were enough for Yang Chen to confirm the existence of this large formation. It was impossible for others to sneak into Chunyang Palace silently. However, this large formation was too huge, with a radius of thousands of miles. With Yang Chen's speed, even if he flew on his sword, it would take him 2 days and 2 nights to fly. If he wanted to find out the specific direction of the large formation, it would be impossible to rely on Yang Chen to walk alone to measure it. It was estimated that others had already refined fifth earth genuine essence, and it was impossible to complete. Where did Yang Chen have so much time to squander now? In the face of a large formation of thousands of miles, even if Yang Chen had the memory of his previous life, he could not help but frown. He only knew that the fifth earth true essence existed here, but he did not know how it was distributed. Now that he was on the ground, he understood the difficulty of refining the fifth earth true essence. Not only that, but it also involved the face of the pure Yang Palace. If he did not figure out the trend of the formation, Yang Chen could not use the formation. To find out the situation of the large formation, Yang Chen could not do it alone. For a time, Yang Chen also began to be in a dilemma. He could only tell the existence of this large formation to the head of Chunyang Palace to decide. Of course, if the head of the palace knew about it, he would definitely send someone to investigate. Beating the grass to scare the snake was a must. Maybe there would be a fierce fight. It was just that at that time it would not be so easy for Yang Chen to collect the fifth earth genuine essence. This kind of thing that might expose Yang Chen's details, unless it was a last resort, Yang Chen would never use it easily. Yang Chen, who was somewhat worried, walked almost aimlessly in the desert valley for a few days, and could not think of a way. Yang Chen had heard of this kind of large formation, but he had never seen it before. If he had enough time to explore it, he would definitely have no problem, But the problem now was that there was no time. Sitting on the top of a sand dune, Yang Chun struggled to think of a way. His eyes were also focused on the distant desert, and he did not waver for a long time. Hundreds of silk-like spiritual awareness explored out, and the movements within a radius of 100 feet were almost under his control. However, the arrangement of this large formation was extremely hidden, and it was naturally arranged according to the terrain. The exploration of the spiritual awareness could not explore too far away, and could only be concentrated on a point at the foot. Suddenly, there was a slight movement in the sand where he was sitting. A black sand scorpion held up two big pincers, and the spikes on its tail slowly poked its head out of the sand, and then crawled out. As soon as the sand scorpion moved, Yang Chen's eyes were attracted. After watching the sand scorpion swagger around its own territory, it went to another place, its claws moved a few times, and then drilled into the sand. Yang Chen's eyes suddenly lit up. He could not know the formation of the barren sand valley and the distribution of the fifth earth spiritual essence, but this did not mean that the animals living in the barren sand valley did not know. As long as it was within their territory, they must be clear about the distribution of the spiritual power. As long as he could communicate with these things, and find a few large demonic beasts, he might be able to know the distribution of the formation. To communicate with demonic beasts, one had to mention the beast-taming sects, beast-taming art. The beast-taming art of the beast-taming sect could establish a more direct way of communication with one's pet, and thus achieve the purpose of controlling one's pet. Fan Shan was a member of the beast-taming sect, and could even control a very powerful demonic beast at the Mahayana stage. In Yang Chen's mind, the words of Taishang Laojuan's green bull before it beheaded still echoed. There is a magical power called the beast-taming art, which is a cultivation method of the demonic race. It is 100 times better than those of the beast-taming sect, but the requirements are harsh, and it depends on whether you have the luck. A magical power that was 100 times better than the beast-taming art of the beast-taming sect, how powerful would it be? However, the Green Bull also said that this magical power had harsh requirements, so Yang Chun had to carefully recall this magical power, and slowly began to ponder it. It was indeed very troublesome. This magical power needed the demonic race to cultivate, and Yang Chun was a human, so it was naturally not easy. However, after careful pondering and analysis, Yang Chun found a little surprising sign. It seemed that as long as he could solve some small problems, he would be able to cultivate this magical power of the beast-taming art. This beast-taming art was mainly the cultivation of the divine sense. Although it also needed the support of a strong spiritual power, the spiritual power was only the subduing power of the beast, and not the real core of control. The real use of communicating with the demonic beasts was still a strong divine sense. In order to establish this kind of communication, it was necessary to let the demonic beasts who wanted to communicate think that Yang Chun was born in the demonic race. This was the most crucial point. As long as this problem was solved, everything could be easily solved. Chapter 207. For most people, it was impossible to make a monster think that they were a monster beast. However, Yang Chun was an exception, especially after he had cultivated to the third layer of the three purities secret art. In the last paragraph of the beast-controlling secret art that the green ox gave Yang Chun, there was something that Yang Chun did not think was the original text of the beast-controlling secret art. Yang Chun suspected that the green ox added it himself. What surprised Yang Chun was that this paragraph was the green ox's own spiritual awareness cultivation secret art. This small section of the secret art was completely a spiritual awareness cultivation method, but it could simulate the green ox's own aura. The most important thing was that if Yang Chun had not cultivated the three purities secret art, he would never have been able to comprehend it, let alone cultivate it. But it was so coincidental that Yang Chun learned the cultivation method of the three purities secret art from the mouth of the Grand Supreme Elderly Lord, and he had already cultivated it to the third layer. All of this made Yang Chen feel that there was some inside story in it, but when he thought about it carefully, it was a bit incredible. If it was the plot of the Grand Supreme Elderly Lord, he would not sacrifice himself and the green ox mount. Moreover, when the green ox said this, it could not guarantee that Yang Chen could learn the three purities' secret art from the mouth of the Grand Supreme Elderly Lord. It must be known that at that time, the Grand Supreme Elderly Lord let Yang Chen choose his own cultivation method. If Yang Chen directly chose the pill method and the refining method at that time, wouldn't everything be annihilated? However, whether it was a coincidence or an inside story, for Yang Chen, there were only advantages and no disadvantages. It was not a burden to have more skills, especially this kind of cross-race magical power. If he could cultivate it, it would simply be a big killing weapon. After having a way, Yang Chen immediately rushed to the nearest big town in the barren sand valley. There were many of these towns in the barren sand valley, and they were usually the place where the cultivators who practiced in the barren sand valley replenished their supplies. There were not only cultivators in these towns, but also mortals. Towns were usually built next to an oasis to facilitate people's lives. In this kind of town, it was much safer than in the wild. The cultivators also followed the rules and rarely made trouble in the town. Even if there was any discord, it would be resolved in the desert outside the town. Although no one knew who set this rule, and no one would use this rule to restrain others, no one would violate this invisible rule. The town was not big, with only a little more than 100 households. It was about the size of a village. By the time Yang Chen arrived at the town, it was already late at night. As soon as he entered the town, he discovered that there were people using their divine senses to investigate. However, these divine senses were only probing, they didn't have any malicious intent. Yang Chen didn't care at all. He found a room and settled down. People like Yang Chen, who came to the town, found a room to live in, and immediately began to meditate and cultivate, were almost everywhere. Yang Chen's behavior was not unusual at all. However, no one knew that what Yang Chen cultivated was a demon clan's divine ability. To cultivate the beast-controlling secret art, naturally, he had to succeed in cultivating the part of the green ox's secret art first. Yang Chen had already studied the secret method back and forth several times along the way. Almost every obscure place was racked his brains to consider it, and he found the most likely explanation. He didn't dare to say that he had mastered it, but he understood most of it. The cultivation methods in this world were like this. After all, the records of cultivation methods were all words and images. Even if the description was accurate, there were still places where people would misunderstand. The so-called perception was reflected in the understanding of these words and images. Those with high perception could be said to have the deepest understanding. Everyone had a different understanding of the same cultivation method, so everyone would have different effects when they cultivated different cultivation methods. Perhaps except for the creator of the cultivation method, no one dared to say that they fully understood it. This was the case with the secret art left by the green ox. After all, the green ox was a demon clan. If Yang Chen, a human, pondered the cultivation method, there would indeed be some deviation. Yang Chen was a cautious person. Since the green ox said that the conditions for cultivation were harsh, it would not be exaggerated at all. Even with the cultivation experience of the green ox, he was careful to verify it for a long time. Along the way, he was considering various possibilities, and when he got here, he began to experiment slowly. Carefully mobilizing spiritual awareness, according to the cultivation method of the green ox, Yang Chen began the first cultivation. With the foundation of the three purities secret art, in terms of mobilizing spiritual awareness, Yang Chen completed the first part almost effortlessly. But soon Yang Chen discovered that when he cultivated to the latter part, his own primordial spirit began to split involuntarily. Before cultivating the three purities secret art, Yang Chen had never split the second spirit. Because Yang Chen's current cultivation base was still very weak, splitting the spirit would inevitably cause the cultivation base to disperse, which would inevitably cause the cultivation speed to slow down. But now, the spirit began to split itself, completely out of Yang Chen's control. Wanting to forcibly stop the cultivation method, Yang Chen found that he could not stop, as if he had fallen into a trap, but he could never escape. This cultivation method was so evil, but it was like a devil's art, he couldn't stop it. Involuntarily shocked, Yang Chen immediately settled his mind, since there was no way back. He simply devoted himself to cultivation. In the violent shock of the splitting of the spiritual awareness, Yang Chen's consciousness appeared in his own sea of consciousness in an instant. The long bloody river still divided the sea of consciousness into two halves. There was a shadow of the sun in the sky, there was lava under the blood river, and a towering tree connected the sky and the earth. But soon, there was a little more in the sea of consciousness. Two huge and curved bull-horn phantoms appeared directly at both ends of the long bloody river, and a white arch bridge crossed the long bloody river, connecting the roots of the two bull horns together. The two bull horns exuded a wild and unruly aura, like a fierce giant bull perched in Yang Chen's sea of consciousness. This aura was familiar to Yang Chen. It was clearly the monster qi of Taishang Laojuan's green bull. After the transformation of the sea of consciousness was completed, Yang Chen's consciousness also crashed back into his body, and he once again took over the control of the body. Then Yang Chen was surprised to find that his spirit did not completely split. It seemed that only a small part was separated, and this part had completely had the aura of the green bull. It seemed that the part of the secret art left by the green bull had been successfully completed, and the two huge bull horn phantoms in the sea of consciousness had fully explained all this. With Yang Chen's experience, he could naturally understand that the phantoms were just because his cultivation of this cultivation method was not deep enough. When the cultivation was deep enough, the phantoms would become more and more solid, and the aura would become closer and closer to the green bull. Since this part had been completed, Yang Chen immediately forgot the fear and began to ponder the beast-controlling secret art. Chapter 208. Compared with the secret art of Qingyou, the beast-controlling secret art was pitifully simple. In addition to requiring the monster race to cultivate, the rest was not complicated. Yang Chen now has the breath of Qingyou, and immediately began to try to cultivate the beast-controlling secret art. This was a complete adventure. Fortunately, Yang Chen's luck was good. With the foundation of the three purities secret art, even the secret art left by Qingyou could be accidentally practiced. It seemed that God was also letting Yang Chen cultivate this beast-controlling secret art. In just one short night, Yang Chen completed the initial cultivation of the beast-controlling secret art. When the beast-controlling secret art completed the circulation of the cultivation method for the first time, Yang Chen seemed to feel a strange aura between heaven and earth. The original familiar breath of the monster seemed to have changed into a taste, becoming a little closer to Yang Chen, and there was also a faint attraction. Yang Chen did not need to use his spiritual awareness to explore, but he could easily distinguish the aura of various monsters from the surroundings. He could even roughly judge from these auras what type of monsters there were in his various directions, and how their strength was. This was something that even the people of the beast-taming sect might not be able to master. Even Fan Shan, who was at the nascent soul stage, might not be able to do so. Their beast-taming spell could only establish a connection with one type of demonic beast at most. Moreover, it needed to be conquered first. The beast-controlling secret art of Yang Chen was completely different. The cultivation method of the monster race was the cultivation method of the monster race. After all, the connection with the monster race was still greater. In the town, Yang Chen only stayed for one night in a hurry. Early the next morning, Yang Chen left the town and rushed directly into the desert. He wanted to find a monster to try the new beast-controlling secret art. A sand scorpion, when it was caught by Yang Chen, was still struggling, and its tail stung fiercely on Yang Chen's hand. But when Yang Chen's beast controlling secret art was launched, the sand scorpion gradually stopped struggling and then became motionless. Communicating with the sand scorpion was to get the distribution of spiritual power within its sphere of influence. Soon, when Yang Chen's will was transmitted into the consciousness of the sand scorpion, there was a blurred picture in Yang Chen's mind. On the picture, the distribution of the earth's spiritual power appeared a little blurred. Done. Yang Chen was secretly ecstatic. Although this sand scorpion was small, it had successfully verified Yang Chen's idea. Yang Chen now had no need to tell the high level of Chunyang Palace about the formation of the sand scorpion. As long as he did it secretly, he could definitely make the Taishaman suffer in silence. Doing it, Yang Chen did not want to waste time now. Who knows how long this formation had been maintained and how much the fifth earth spiritual power had been gathered. If Yang Chen got it, he would be with him. After carefully sensing the surrounding aura, Yang Chen immediately found a powerful demonic beast and flew in that direction. It was actually easy to distinguish which territory the demonic beasts were familiar with. The stronger the demonic beast, the larger its territory. It was a very simple principle. In this direction was an earth elemental beast that had lived for countless years. It had a gentle temperament but was powerful. It would not easily provoke cultivators, but ordinary cultivators did not dare to touch a single hair of this demonic beast. It was considered peaceful. Usually, this earth elemental beast would lurk under the sand dunes, cultivating while resting. It would not care even if someone passed by. It was precisely because of the earth elemental beast's characteristics that this area was relatively safe. People often passed through it. When Yang Chen appeared, 3 teams of cultivators happened to pass by. Yo, isn't this the Taoist brother from Chunyang Palace? The belt on Yang Chen's body had been engraved with an obvious Chunyang Palace symbol by Grandmaster Wang Yong. It could be seen at a glance from afar. The young man who was the leader of the 3 people, after seeing Yang Chen's figure, immediately recognized Yang Chen's sect from this mark, and his words were not very polite. What are you doing in such a hurry? Are you looking for Chu Heng who betrayed your sect? Aren't you afraid of being carried back to the sect? After Chu Heng injured them, he had sent the 4 disciples of the law enforcement hall back to Chunyang Palace. He had already become a laughing stock in the cultivation world. Chunyang Palace had sent more than a dozen golden core grandmasters to search for Chu Heng's whereabouts. But after a year, Chu Heng was nowhere to be found. It made the disciples of Chunyang Palace unable to lift their heads no matter where they went. A glint flashed in Yang Chen's eyes as he looked at the 3 fellows flying over. He was filled with impoliteness. The young leader didn't care at all. He placed the Taishaman symbol on his cosmic bag in a conspicuous place, deliberately letting Yang Chen see it clearly. The other 2 followed closely. The young leader slowed down the speed of his sword kinesis flight. With a mocking expression on his face, he stared at Yang Chen without saying a word. Sometimes, this kind of silent insult was the most hurtful. The 3 of them clearly had the same idea. Yang Chen was only an early-stage foundation establishment cultivator. The weakest of the 3 of them was at the advanced foundation establishment realm. 2 of them were at the peak of the foundation establishment realm, so how could they take Yang Chen seriously? Although he didn't like these 3 guys, Yang Chen was not an impulsive person. They met by chance, so there was no need to fight to the death. Even though the other party was a Taishaman, Yang Chen wouldn't kill them on sight. He just stood quietly and said nothing. He waited for the 3 guys to leave. He still had business to deal with. It turns out that fellow Taoism Yang has come in person. Are you here to wash away your shame? Yang Chen didn't speak, but it didn't mean that the other party would easily let go of Yang Chen, especially after the young leader discovered the identity of Yang Chen. Because of Chu Heng, the reputation of Yang Chen of Chunyang Palace, in addition to the heaven-seizing pill and the alchemist, was more the object of ridicule in the barren sand valley. Especially the Taishanmen. Chunyang Palace actually wanted the Taishanmen to admit their mistakes and apologize because of Yang Chun. How could they, who had always claimed to be the top disciple of the righteous path, tolerate such a thing? When they saw Yang Chun, how could they be willing to let him go without ridiculing and humiliating him? Boring. It's not your turn to tell me what to do. Yang Chun snorted coldly and responded rudely. After that, he didn't say anything more and still flew unhurriedly to his destination. Boring? How could it be? The young leader laughed out loud and waved his hand. The three of them laughed and followed behind Yang Chen. They laughed loudly at Yang Chen's back and said, "If you are seriously injured by Chu Heng, the traitor of Chunyang Palace, you can say that we are your saviors. We will definitely send you back to Chunyang Palace." Yang Chen, who was also flying on his sword, suddenly stopped in the air. He made a light turn and faced the three Taishanmen disciples with a smile on his face. "Do you know the whereabouts of Chu Heng? Is he still in this barren sand valley?" Chapter 209. Although Yang Chen's face was full of smiles when he asked, the light in his eyes still made the three disciples of the greatest heaven sect who followed up suddenly have such a panic. How could it be? The young leader's eyes were evasive, and he even stuttered when he spoke. The two followers behind him were also evasive, not daring to look at Yang Chen's eyes. A trace of the soul-shaking skill made the three people lose control of their minds in an instant, and they involuntarily exposed their inner thoughts. From the performance of the three people, Yang Chen was almost certain that although the three people did not necessarily know Chu Heng's specific location, Chu Heng must still be hiding in the barren sand valley. As long as Chu Heng was not eliminated, the face of Chunyang Palace would always be covered with a bloody handprint. That was a shame that could only be washed away with Chu Heng's blood. Yang Chen had been taken care of by the sect in 2 lives. How could he let Chu Heng go? Yang Chen was clear about this, Chu Heng was clear, the people of Chunyang Palace were clear, and the people of other sects were also clear about this. Naturally, the 3 guys in front of him were also clear about this. Yang Chen's questioning reminded them of some taboos. Chu Heng was already a traitor, which was something that Chunyang Palace had announced to the world. No matter how powerful the Taishanmen were, no matter how Chu Heng was on the side of Taishanmen, before the Taishanmen and Chunyang Palace turned against Chunyang Palace, even the Taishanmen did not dare to be so blatant. The momentary panic had already exposed many problems. Of course, the 3 people were aware of this. After waking up from the shock of Yang Chen's soul-shaking skill, the leading young leader's first reaction was to cry, "Oh no!" Although the disciples of Taishanmen knew a little about this, it was not a big deal for everyone to unconsciously retaliate against Chunyang Palace, who wanted the sect to apologize. But this matter couldn't be brought up in public. The reason why he apologized to Chunyang Palace and Yang Chen was that Chunyang Palace was in the right about the heaven stairway. If this matter were to be exposed again, then it would be very bad. They still couldn't understand why none of them dared to look Yang Chen in the eye even though their cultivation was higher than Yang Chen's. The feeling of dodging was really humiliating. Their strong pride and the fear of having their secret almost exposed made the 3 of them have the same thought. Everyone looked at each other and immediately saw the same thought in the other's eyes. They were in the wilderness and there was no one around. They released their divine senses and found that there were no other humans in the area except for those animals and demonic beasts. It was really the best place to kill people, especially when this place was close to a powerful demonic beast. Even if they were discovered in the future, they would just die in the mouth of the demonic beast. No one could be blamed. They heard that Yang Chen might even be a 3rd revolution pill refinement master, so he must have a lot of good things on him. As long as they killed Yang Chen, those things could directly benefit everyone. Not to mention anything else, just the belt alone was enough to make people envious. Of course, Yang Chen saw the killing intent in the eyes of the 3 people. Seeing this situation, Yang Chen smiled. He didn't want to kill these guys, but they had no one to blame but themselves for courting death. In that case, please help yourselves. Yang Chen cupped his hands, turned around, and continued to fly on his sword towards the sand dune where the subterranean beast was. Since the other party had decided to kill, Yang Chen didn't say anything else. The three of them were about to make a move, but when they saw the direction Yang Chen was flying in, they were all delighted. They had been in this desolate valley for a long time, so they naturally knew what was in that direction. Yang Chen was going there himself, saving them the trouble of carrying things. With Yang Chen in front and the three of them behind, Yang Chen flew at a leisurely pace for more than an hour before they arrived at the sand dune where the subterranean beast was. This subterranean beast never took the initiative to attack cultivators, and the three people behind knew this very well. When they saw Yang Chen land on the sand dune so accurately, they couldn't help but feel that their plan had succeeded. The three people were divided into three directions, and Yang Chen was faintly surrounded in the middle. It looked like Yang Chen was a little tired. He put away his flying sword and sat down on the sand dune to rest. He even took out a water bag from his cosmos bag and gulped down water, completely unaware of the three people around him. The three disciples of the Taishaman looked at Yang Chen as if he were an idiot. They had seen inexperienced people before, but they had never seen a guy who didn't know how to be on guard. He had just reached Foundation establishment and was already so careless. If Yang Chen didn't die, there would be no justice in the world. The circle of three people had already started to slowly shrink, moving closer to the center. Everyone had a tacit understanding to prepare their flying sword. They were all using sword kinesis flight anyway, so they could use it at any time. Only Yang Chen recklessly put away his flying sword and sat on the back of the subterranean beast to rest. Seeing the three people approaching him, the smile on Yang Chen's face was even more lush, and even waved to the young man who had just taken the lead, and asked loudly, "Fellow Taoist, do you remember something and want to tell me?" "Not really, I just want to rest together. You don't mind, do you?" "Fellow Taoist Yang." The leading youth also had a harmless smile on his face. He didn't move fast, but he slowly flew in front of Yang Chen. In the two directions behind Yang Chen, the other two people also maintained this speed and slowly gathered. Hearing that they didn't want to tell him anything, Yang Chen stretched out his hand and waved at the leading youth. He didn't seem to care that they were resting. His eyes were lowered and his expression was restrained, as if he really wanted to rest. "Fellow Taoist Yang, this place's feng shui is pretty good." Their figures were getting closer and closer. Just a little bit more and the three of them would reach the edge of the sand dune. At this distance, the three of them attacked at the same time. Even if Yang Chen was at the peak of Foundation establishment, he probably wouldn't be able to escape, let alone an early-stage Foundation establishment disciple. That's right. The feng shui is indeed pretty good. When he heard this, Yang Chen raised his gaze and looked around. He nodded, then turned back to look at the leading youth and revealed a meaningful smile. "It reminds me of something I often say." The leading youth had already started to gather his power, but he still had a fake smile on his face. He asked curiously, "Something you often say?" "Fellow Taoist Yang, which one is it?" "Every injustice has its perpetrator, and every debt has its debtor. Fellow Taoists, we have no grudges against each other in the past, so why must you take this path of no return?" Yang Chen looked at the leader and blurted out his catchphrase. Chapter 210. Hearing Yang Chen's signature words, how could the three of them not understand that Yang Chen had seen through their intentions? The young leader was shocked and could no longer care about anything else. He shouted, "Do it!" The flying sword under his feet instantly left his body and turned into a sword light. It flew towards the throat of Yang Chen, who was sitting not far away. The two flying swords behind him also flew towards Yang Chen from two different directions. It looked like Yang Chen was about to be injured by the three flying swords. In a split second, the sand dune under Yang Chen's feet suddenly began to change. In an instant, it rose at least 10 feet high, lifting Yang Chen's body high up. The 3 flying swords made 3 ear-piercing whistles in the air. Under the control of their respective masters, they made a sharp turn in the air and continued to stab towards Yang Chen's rising body. Roar! A deep roar came from the ground. Then, the 3 of them saw a giant palm with a radius of at least 10 feet appear in their field of vision. It slapped them from top to bottom. The 3 flying swords seemed to have hit an invisible barrier. They only made a soft clanging sound and directly fell to the ground. Unknowingly, a huge pressure had appeared above the heads of the 3 of them. From above, it was as if Mt. Tai was pressing down on them. Under this strong pressure, the 3 bodies suspended in the air could no longer maintain their flying posture. Like kites with a short string, they fell straight to the ground. No matter how much the 3 of them mobilized their spiritual power in the air, they couldn't stop the huge pressure. The 3 of them, who had never experienced this before, were slapped heavily to the ground. Fortunately, the ground of the barren sand valley was a piece of loose sand. The 3 of them were only a few feet high, so the fall didn't cause any serious injuries. The 3 of them only fell heavily to the ground. As soon as they touched the ground, they immediately jumped up. However, the nightmare was not over. As soon as the young leader bounced up, the giant palm that had slapped the 3 flying swords directly fell from the sky and slapped him into the sand at his feet. When the other 2 followers saw this scene clearly, they were scared out of their wit. They didn't even bother to pick up the flying sword that had been slapped away. They exerted strength in their legs and wanted to leave this dangerous place. The Peak Foundation establishment follower's speed was very fast, but just as his body flew up a few feet, he felt his vision go black, as if he had rushed into a huge black hole. He could no longer see clearly, but he could smell the stench of blood around him, but he didn't know where he was. The luckiest of them all was the mid-foundation stage follower. Because he was flying a bit slower, he could only watch helplessly as his remaining companion charged into a huge bloody mouth and disappeared in a flash. This scene almost made the lucky follower faint from fright. It was only then that he understood what had happened. Since this was the habitat of the famous subterranean beast, the one that had slapped the young leader and swallowed his companion in one gulp was that subterranean beast. However, wasn't that subterranean beast known to never take the initiative to attack cultivators? Then how could everything in front of him be explained? The surviving follower was terrified. The sudden turn of events had completely destroyed his ability to think. Other than trembling in front of this huge monster, he could not do anything else. The monster's ferocious behavior and terrifying size had already shocked him greatly. Coupled with the monster's powerful aura, the remaining follower had long been scared out of his wits. He did not dare to move at all. He could only widen his eyes in horror as he watched the bloody mouth slowly approach him. The 2 nostrils that were thicker than his body emitted a foul stench directly onto his face. The little follower wished he could faint right away. It would be better than facing such a terrifying beast. A figure slowly appeared in the follower's field of vision. It slowly turned from blurry to clear. By the time the follower's eyes focused on the figure, Yang Chen had already walked in front of him. "Fellow cultivator, the feng shui here is really good, isn't it?" At this moment, in the eyes of the follower, Yang Chen was like a terrifying demon. Even when he heard Yang Chen's voice, he could not help but tremble. You, ha 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 ha." Facing Yang Chen, the little attendant was only left with a stuttering voice, and could not make a complete sentence. His upper and lower gums trembled involuntarily, making a loud gurgling sound. "I really want to know the whereabouts of Chu Heng, the traitor disciple of my Chunyang Palace." Yang Chen maintained the initial smile on his face. He approached the frightened guy as if he was chatting with a friend and asked with a smile, "I wonder if you can tell me where he is?" In barren sand valley." The follower trembled as he stammered out these few words. He did not dare to look at Yang Chen again, nor did he dare to look at the giant beast that had been hovering above his head, spewing stinky hot air and dripping sticky saliva. "Where is he in the barren sand valley?" Yang Chen continued to ask. This was a pleasant surprise. Chu Heng was still hiding in the barren sand valley. Presumably, someone was carefully protecting him. Even if Chunyang Palace had sent a few Jindan stage masters to search everywhere, it was estimated that everyone would ignore the barren sand valley. Who would have thought that he would dare to hide in the barren sand valley, which was very disadvantageous to his spiritual power? The most dangerous place was the safest. He did not expect Chu Heng to have such courage. "I don't know. Maybe the martial uncles know." Under the huge mouth of the subterranean beast, the follower did not even think of resisting. After saying a few words, he began to speak fluently. He immediately told everything he knew, for fear that he would be swallowed in one bite if he spoke slowly. It was understandable that a follower did not know this kind of secret. Yang Chen smiled at the follower and turned to leave. The follower had just breathed a sigh of relief when he felt the top of his head heat up. Then his vision darkened. He reached out and touched a few sharp pillars. "Buddy, please lift your foot." Yang Chen did not care about what was happening behind him. He just shouted at the top of his head. In the midst of the rumbling, the giant palm moved to a place, revealing a huge palm print. In the middle of it was the young leader, who was on the verge of death. After a few special techniques, a qi-nourishing pill was directly stuffed into the young man's mouth. After a while, the young man let out a long breath and slowly woke up. "Fellow Taoist." The young man lying on the ground had just opened his eyes when he heard Yang Chen's voice from above his head. It sounded so unreal. "I want to know what your sect has set up in the barren sand valley. I wonder if fellow Taoist can satisfy my little curiosity?" Chapter 211. A disciple at the peak of the Foundation establishment realm was almost killed by the subterranean beast. In the face of Yang Chen's soul-shaker art, there was no way he could hide anything. Yang Chen didn't even need to use his killing intent to say what Yang Chen wanted to know. There were indeed many disciples of the Taishanmen here, but they were all wood and earth elementalists. There seemed to be nothing unusual. Almost all the people here were wood and earth elementalists. Naturally, when disciples came to the trial, it was very reasonable for the Taishanmen to send a few golden core grandmasters to take care of them at any time. It was said that among these masters, there was an expert at the nascent soul stage. It seemed that everything was normal, but Yang Chen knew what was going on. Presumably, these low-level disciples didn't know about the big array. As for Chu Heng, the Taishanmen didn't hide it. Chu Heng had attacked Yang Chen because he was on good terms with Li Qingchen of the Taishanmen, which led to him being expelled from the Chunyang Palace. Most of the Taishanmen disciples supported Chu Heng. Although the Taishanmen couldn't openly support Chu Heng, they could still take care of him in places where others couldn't see. At least in the barren sand valley, Chu Heng lived a comfortable life. Chu Heng could go in and out of any supply point of the Taishanmen at any time, and he could get support. After a few years, Chu Heng almost knew all the disciples of the Taishanmen in the barren sand valley. If anything happened, these disciples of the Taishanmen would also inform Chu Heng. Chunyang Palace sent a few golden core grandmasters to the barren sand valley to investigate, but it was all because the disciples of the Taishanmen got the news in advance and reminded Chu Heng, which led to several golden core grandmasters returning in failure. Chu Heng had been hiding very well in the barren sand valley, and with the help of the Taishanmen, he steadily improved his strength. For the Taishanmen, secretly helping Chu Heng meant that they could ruin the reputation of Chunyang Palace and directly take revenge for them, bowing their heads and apologizing. In turn, they could laugh at Chunyang Palace. It was a profitable business with little capital. Chu Heng has always been in barren sand valley. Very good. The smile on Yang Chen's face grew wider and wider. The originally arrogant guy at his feet was now lying on the ground like an idiot, unable to speak anymore. Yang Chen stood up, gently waved his hand, and turned to leave. It opened its ferocious mouth, and swallowed the young man on the ground into its stomach in one gulp. This enormous figure was naturally the subterranean beast. It was now equivalent to the cultivation of a human Jedon Supreme Master. Coupled with its huge size and strong body, even cultivators of the same level as it were not its opponent. Fortunately, the subterranean beast was gentle and did not take the initiative to attack cultivators. When Yang Chen landed on its back, it only took him one try to establish communication with the subterranean beast. The beast-taming spell was indeed a magical power of the demon race. When Yang Chen did not intend to control the demon beast and only communicated with it with the intention of asking for information, he easily received feedback from the subterranean beast. Once the communication channel was established, the rest of the matter was much easier to handle. 3 guys who didn't know life or death bumped into him head-on. The subterranean beast was gentle and did not take the initiative to attack, but it did not mean that it did not have the power to attack. When Yang Chen asked for help, the subterranean beast did not hesitate at all. It immediately attacked and easily killed the 3 fellows. The Qiankuan bag it carried with it was spat out and delivered to Yang Chen, but the Dharma treasures on those fellows were directly swallowed and refined by the subterranean beast. The 3 of them were earth cultivators to begin with, and to the subterranean beast they were the best tonic. Of course, Yang Chen did not let it help for nothing. He gave it 1,000-year-old ginseng. Although it was said to be 1,000-year-old ginseng, it was close to 2,000 years old. Even for a golden core subterranean beast, it was a rare treasure. With such benefits, it was naturally easy for Yang Chen to know the distribution and direction of the surrounding spiritual power. Soon, a map that covered a radius of hundreds of kilometers appeared in Yang Chen's mind. The subterranean beast had been here for a long time, at least 1,000 years. When it was young, it often patrolled its territory, so it was very familiar with the surrounding terrain. In addition, its cultivation was successful, so it could clearly distinguish the distribution of spiritual power in its surroundings with its eyes closed. Such a detailed distribution of spiritual power immediately gave Yang Chen a basic understanding of the array hidden in the desolate valley. After all, this array relied on the natural terrain. This area was equivalent to a corner of the array. Yang Chen could already roughly determine the direction of the array and where its focus was. He got along well with the subterranean beast. After asking the subterranean beast about its powerful neighbors, Yang Chen quickly waved goodbye and flew in another direction. As long as there were 4 or 5 more powerful demon beasts like the subterranean beast, Yang Chen would be able to completely outline the array. When that happened, the entire array would be unobstructed. The 3 young talents of the greatest heaven sect, in less than an hour, from the inside to the outside, from the skin to the bones, disappeared without a trace. The subterranean beast didn't even look at the 3 Qiankuan bags before tossing them to Yang Chen. It must have known that a large sect like this could use the Qiankuan bags to find the location of its disciples. Yang Chen would never believe the rumor that this subterranean beast had a gentle temperament and never took the initiative to attack cultivators. Perhaps most of the time, the subterranean beast had a harmless expression, but to make such a judgment, it couldn't have just killed 1 or 2 cultivators. Presumably, many independent itinerant cultivators had gone missing in this place, but no one had investigated. Yang Chen didn't care about the Qiankuan bags. He'd killed more than 1 or 2 Taishanmen. He could just toss them into his merit ring and there would be no repercussions. After flying leisurely to the edge of the subterranean beast's territory, Yang Chen slowed down. According to the subterranean beast, its neighbor wasn't very friendly. Not only was it irascible, but it was also much stronger than it was. According to the subterranean beast's estimates, it might be able to fight against its neighbor if there were 4 or 5 of it. This piqued Yang Chen's interest even more. With such strength, could it already be at the nascent soul realm? Of course, that wasn't how the demons were divided. They were only equivalent. If that was the case, wouldn't its territory be several times larger than the subterranean beasts? As long as he obtained a terrain here, he would be able to cover a few places that Yang Chen could run to. Of course, this viper demon beast wasn't easy to deal with. It was powerful, and if things didn't work out, Yang Chen would probably die on the spot. Therefore, Yang Chen had to be prepared in advance so that he wouldn't be at a loss when the time came. Chapter 212. Apart from the beast-taming art, the other reason Yang Chen could persist until he reached the viper's side was that the viper was relatively slow. Yang Chen had a flying sword in his collection that was extremely fast. Although it couldn't compare to a magic treasure specialized in speed, according to the subterranean beast's description, it should have no problem escaping. Even the subterranean beast's earth escape could escape in time. If things went wrong, Yang Chen would be able to escape to a safe place in time. It was precisely with such a guarantee of safety that Yang Chen could rest assured and boldly prepare to go in and meet the viper monster for a while. In contrast to the peace of the subterranean beast, even the air here seemed to ripple with a violent aura. There were a few places in the desolate sand valley that low-level disciples shouldn't even attempt to enter. This place was one of them. Yang Chen circulated the beast-taming art to the extreme. He rapped his request to communicate and ask for directions in his divine sense and sent it far away. His own people stood on the flying sword and flew forward slowly and carefully. The moment they sensed something was wrong, they would immediately slip away. The viper's territory was astonishingly large. Yang Chen had to fly for almost an hour to reach the subterranean beast's territory, but Yang Chen had spent at least an entire day on the viper's side. Of course, this had something to do with his cautiousness, but it also showed how large the territory of the demon beasts was. The sky darkened and then brightened. It was already noon the next day. The sun was scorching the ground, and the surroundings were filled with steam. There wasn't a trace of moisture. Yang Chen didn't care about this atmosphere at all. However, he had circulated the beast-taming art with all his might for almost an entire day and night, but he hadn't received a single response. It was as if there weren't any demon beasts that could communicate with Yang Chen in this vast territory. This was clearly impossible. No matter how strong a demon beast was, there had to be food in its territory. There had to be some place where it could coexist. Otherwise, wouldn't a lone demon beast seem too lonely? But after all this time, not a single demon beast had communicated with him. This was clearly abnormal. There was only one reason, and that was the owner of this territory. The place Yang Chen had arrived at was the center of the viper's territory, as described by the subterranean beast. There were still no signs of them. That in itself was enough to explain a lot of things. At this point, Yang Chen no longer moved forward. Under the probing of his divine sense, there was not a single monstrous beast in the surroundings. The silence was somewhat frightening. Frowning, Yang Chen stopped the flying sword and stood there for a while. Then, he decisively turned around and left. Just as he did this, a huge aura suddenly appeared around Yang Chen. The sand beneath his feet seemed to have suddenly turned into a flowing river, parting with a loud bang. A huge body rapidly drilled out from the ground and rose from the ground. A bloody mouth was wide open, charging in the direction Yang Chen's flying sword had escaped. If Yang Chen had been just a little faster, he would have been able to rush into the mouth almost immediately. Of course, Yang Chen wouldn't rush into the viper's mouth himself. He nimbly made a turn on his flying sword and was about to rush in another direction. However, after turning around, he discovered that he was already surrounded by a huge viper's body. No matter which direction he turned in, he would directly crash into the viper's body. At this moment, the viper's huge head was no longer facing Yang Chen. Instead, it was raised high and looking down. Yang Chen was directly surrounded by the viper's body and head. Its two blood-red eyes emitted a deathly glow as it stared at Yang Chen below, its long tongue flicking in and out continuously. Yang Chen didn't expect the viper's body to be so huge. In his previous life, he didn't have many dealings with demonic beasts. Even if he did, it was only after he ascended. As for the demonic beasts in the spiritual world and the immortal world, it was a completely different concept. They didn't rely solely on their size to conquer the world. Its long body was already more than 1,000 feet long, and the thinnest part of its body was a few feet in diameter. It coiled around the ground like a large entangled city wall. The scales on its body emitted a kind of black glow, almost like a natural protective magic weapon. The strong aura of the earth's spiritual force wrapped around its body. Yang Chen completely believed that even if his strongest flying sword were to slash at these scales, it would at most be able to cut a few dozen scales, and he would immediately suffer a fatal attack from the viper. At this moment, Yang Chen had nowhere to retreat. He could only hover in the air, motionless. However, there was not the slightest fear on Yang Chen's face. He still continued to communicate his intention to ask for directions through the beast-controlling secret art. His eyes were fixed on the huge eyes of the viper without wavering for a moment. Yang Chen had been opening his spiritual sense along the way, but he didn't find the location of this huge demonic beast at all. This could only mean one thing, and that was that the other party's cultivation realm was far higher than his own, and it also had a kind of concealment method. No wonder the viper's fierce name was spread far and wide. Just this method alone was enough to make cultivators of the same realm suffer a grievance. One had to know that demonic beasts never cared about being aboveboard or sinister and despicable. When facing the enemy, their only goal was to kill the other party, and they didn't care about the means at all. "You are a friend of my demon clan, how can you look like a cultivator?" In the spiritual sense, a violent will suddenly came, completely ignoring the intention of Yang Chen asking for directions. It was completely questioning, and it didn't allow Yang Chen to not answer. "What's in it for me to tell you?" As long as the other party was willing to communicate, it was not a big problem for Yang Chen. Through the spiritual sense that was released through the beast-controlling secret art, he quickly conveyed his meaning, and he didn't even need to open his mouth. Yang Chen knew that it was best to use a straightforward method to communicate with demonic beasts. At this stage, they had not learned how to communicate tactfully, and they were straightforward from the start. Directly expressing his meaning was the best way, and it wouldn't cause the other party to misunderstand. As soon as it sensed Yang Chen's meaning, the huge viper's eyes suddenly flashed a ray of light, and its eyes seemed to emit a knife light that went straight to the bottom of Yang Chen's heart. It had no intention of exchanging anything with Yang Chen, and it wanted to directly suppress Yang Chen. This spiritual sense with a strong killing intent, Yang Chen didn't care at all, and he almost opened his sea of consciousness, letting this threatening spiritual sense rush in. As soon as it entered Yang Chen's sea of consciousness, the long river of blood suddenly rippled, and in an instant, it turned into a big bloody hand, grabbed the spiritual sense, and in a moment it melted completely. As soon as the spiritual sense disappeared, the viper demonic beast immediately noticed it. Suddenly, its movements seemed to pause, and it stared at Yang Chen, and suddenly a wisp of spiritual sense was transmitted. "What benefits do you want?" Chapter 213. For a demonic beast, if the test was unsuccessful, then it would change to another method. Between demonic beasts, if it was not for territory, resources, or prey, there was no need to directly fight to the death. If there was a great disparity in strength, there might be a tyrannical conquest, but if the two sides were almost the same in strength, the best way was to negotiate. Demonic beasts were not fools, especially when there were a large number of cultivators in the barren sand valley. Yang Chen gave the viper demonic beast the impression that he was able to swallow the viper's killing intent without a care, so he was naturally not an easy opponent. Since Yang Chen was just asking for directions and did not mean to harm it, it naturally would not attack immediately. It wanted the secret of Yang Chen's ability to transform into a human, so it naturally had to pay a price. At this stage, although the viper demonic beast had learned to hide, it was its innate ability. It did not learn to hide its strength, but it was very clear about this. Usually, if the cultivation base was not as good as it would be directly frightened by its innate spiritual awareness with a strong killing intent. Yang Chen could take it, so naturally he was almost as powerful as it. Strength was the only way for both sides to communicate equally. Since Yang Chen had accepted its threat, then he naturally had the qualifications to communicate equally with it. In addition to the things I want to ask, help me 3 times. When I collect something in the barren sand valley, you have to protect me. This viper demonic beast could not only hide, but it was also very strong. Yang Chen naturally would not let go of such a natural fighter. Whether it was to collect the earth element true essence or kill Chuheng, he needed such a strong assistant. Yang Chen directly put forward such a condition. In any case, he only had to pay a simple transformation art. This transformation art was almost like a basic cultivation technique in the spiritual realm. The first thing that demonic beasts who ascended had to learn was the transformation art. It was not worth much, but it might be a little precious in this world. Although the shape-shifting art was marvelous, its function was only to allow the demonic beasts to transform their huge bodies into the shape of humans, but they were still demonic beasts on the inside. They could not cultivate the cultivation techniques of humans, nor could they change the demonic beast aura on their bodies. Even if it was spread out in this world, it would not be a big problem. The subterranean beast was only at the golden core stage, so it had no use for such things. However, the viper already had the strength of a nascent soul. If used well, it could become a great help to Yang Chen. Naturally, Yang Chen would put in more effort to rope it in. But for the viper demon beast, this kind of cultivation technique that could transform into a human was a good thing that it could only wish for. It already knew how to hide itself. With the transformation spell, it could completely hide among humans without being noticed. Its safety was greatly improved. Even if it was used to plot against its enemies, it was still a good item at the level of a divine artifact. How could it not be tempted? Deal. Demonic beasts were straightforward when it came to doing things. If it was okay, then it was okay. If it wasn't, then it was okay. There were no twists and turns. Or rather, at least for now, they had not learned those twists and turns. After the viper heard the conditions, it only did a slight calculation of the gains and losses before immediately giving an affirmative answer. At the same time that it was a deal, a ball of white light flew out of the viper demon beast's head and slowly flew in front of Yang Chen. Yang Chen knew that this was the unique method of establishing a contract with the demon clan. It was to use one's divine sense to wrap a trace of the demon's soul. The two parties would exchange and mutually restrict each other. Only when the contract was completed would the demon's soul be returned. Of course, this trace of demon soul contained the contents of the contract between the two parties. It could not be changed. With a thought, the pair of ox horns in his spiritual sea immediately separated into 2 small ox horns. They were wrapped by Yang Chen's divine sense and sent out as well. The viper opened its mouth wide and Yang Chen's demon soul entered its mouth. As for the viper's demon soul, Yang Chen pointed with his finger and kept it in his spiritual sea. After entering the spiritual sea, Yang Chen saw that the viper's demon soul also looked like the viper's original body. However, he did not know how many times smaller it was. So it's a green ox. After the viper kept Yang Chen's demon soul, it immediately transmitted a thought. It seemed that it only now knew what Yang Chen's original body looked like. This is the transformation art. Yang Chen did not waste any time. He directly took out a blank jade slip and engraved the transformation art on it before throwing it to the viper demon beast. The viper swallowed the jade slip in one gulp. To the demon beasts, their bodies were the best cosmos sack. Not only were they convenient to use, but they also did not have to worry about losing them. In just a moment, the viper demon beast understood the contents of the jade slip. At its level, many things had already been poked through the layers of window paper. Soon, it understood the logic behind it. The viper's huge body trembled for a while, and made a crazy cracking sound, as if there were many hands breaking and compressing the viper's bones. Around its body there was a burst of white gas, but under the sun it looked very blurry. However, the dust that rose from the ground directly blocked Yang Chen's vision. Yang Chen was very polite and did not use his spiritual sense to see what was happening in the dust. If it was not in such a desperate situation, the demon beasts would usually not be willing to let people see their original body. This was a basic courtesy. After the cracking sound echoed for a long time, it slowly quieted down. The dust around Yang Chen also began to dissipate slowly. At this time, Yang Chen had already landed on the ground and put away his flying sword. Since they had reached an agreement, there was no need to worry about danger for the time being. The credibility of the demon beasts was sometimes more reliable than the cultivators. When the dust dissipated, what appeared in front of Yang Chen was a very ordinary-looking viper. Its length had become about 3 feet and it was no longer that crazy size. It crawled in front of Yang Chen and coiled its body. The snake's head was raised high, facing Yang Chen, and a spiritual sense was immediately transmitted. Very effective transformation secret art. It was the first time that the viper demon beast practiced the transformation secret art, but it had already reduced its body size by a few hundred times. Although it had not reached the point of directly transforming into a human, but the change in body size was enough to make all the cultivators who faced it relax their vigilance. When this viper demon beast was regarded as an ordinary little viper, it also meant that it was not far from death. The skill is not deep enough. It seems that it will take some time before it can transform into a human form. Yang Chen nodded and said, it was a habitual way of communication. Even if it had to use spiritual sense to communicate, it still liked to talk. Learn to speak slowly. If you don't want to be seen through at a glance, either speak or pretend to be mute. Where do you want to go? I will take you there. The viper nodded on the ground, but its body went straight forward and directly coiled on Yang Chen's leg. Chapter 214. Yang Chen was not surprised by Viper's action. Snakes like to coil up, even if they had cultivated to become demonic beasts. On the contrary, such a situation would make people less suspicious. At most, they would see Viper as a demonic beast or pet that Yang Chen had tamed, and they would not be too guarded against him. Yang Chen stretched out his hand and let Viper coil up his arm. He frowned and asked, have you thought it through? You need at least a few years to master the transformation art before you can transform into a human. Are you going to follow me like this? You don't want your territory anymore? Because of my body size, I have been trapped in this place for thousands of years. I have never left the desolate valley. Viper, who was coiled around Yang Chen's arm, kept flicking its tongue and sent out a thought, even if I can hide my aura, my body will be discovered. Once I cross the border, I will have to fight with a few fellows for a long time. What's the point of fighting for territory? I want to see more places and see a wider world. This was a demonic beast with ideals. Yang Chen had nothing to say about it. In fact, since it had cultivated to the nascent soul realm, if it was not for its body size, it could have traveled around a long time ago. This kind of being trapped in a corner, to put it nicely, was dominating the territory and no one dared to provoke it. To put it bluntly, it was clearly a prison, just that the cell was slightly bigger. Over the years, have you fought with any experts? Yang Chen did not stand on ceremony. Bringing this guy along was definitely the best bodyguard and the best hidden weapon for sneak attack. Anyway, with Viper's demon soul in hand, there was no need to be too cautious. Why not? As they walked forward, Yang Chen asked. A few hundred years ago, a few experts came. It seemed like they wanted to set up something here. Viper kept moving around Yang Chen's body. While answering questions, it also kept probing Yang Chen's body. Now, it had stopped at the side of Yang Chen's belt. It kept flicking its tongue and observing. After a few fights, those people retreated. Actually, in the past 1,000 years, very few people have come to provoke me. Every time, it's an expert. They leave after a fight. It's very boring. Hundreds of years ago, Yang Chen secretly estimated in his heart, those guys should be the people who set up the formation. Viper seemed to have chased them away, but those people definitely did not retreat in the face of difficulties. They had already set up a formation and used the opportunity to leave. However, Yang Chen would definitely not tell the Viper about this. He only requested the Viper to tell him about the distribution of spiritual energy in his territory. Viper did not have the slightest intention of going back on his words. He quickly sent what he knew directly into Yang Chen's divine sense. A terrain map that was more than 10 times larger than the subterranean beast appeared in Yang Chen's mind. The area it covered was so large that even Yang Chen was dumbfounded. This guy's territory covered almost half of the barren sand valley, and it bordered the subterranean beast's territory. Yang Chen easily pieced it together. Instantly, at least a quarter of the barren sand valley's formation map appeared in Yang Chen's mind. Did that little guy in the south tell you that I'm here? Viper immediately sensed something the moment Yang Chen's mind moved, especially when it was pieced together with the subterranean beast's territory. That's right. Yang Chen did not hide anything. The subterranean beast was able to obtain a territory on the edge of the Viper's territory, presumably because the Viper had not crossed the line. Otherwise, with the Viper's powerful strength, it would have long swallowed up the territory. Moreover, the Viper addressed him very intimately. There must be some connection between them. That little guy knows how to endure. Many people like to walk towards it and give it food. The Viper scurried over to Yang Chen's other arm. I wasn't as smart as it was back then. Now, no one dares to come. They don't even have the chance to eat some nourishing stuff. They can only absorb spiritual energy themselves. There was a deep sense of regret in their exchange of thoughts. Yang Chen had long known that the subterranean beast was not simple, but he did not expect the Viper to give it such a high evaluation. The matter here had been settled, and he had even obtained the temporary help of a powerful demon beast. Yang Chen did not want to waste the Viper's knowledge. He immediately asked, "Which of your neighbors is easier to talk to? Go ask for directions." The West. The Viper had no intention of hiding anything. In any case, it was following Yang Chen to leave this place, so it did not matter which direction they went. Since Yang Chen needed it, he would introduce an old friend to him. There would probably not be any trouble, and he could also show off in front of these old enemies. The barren sand valley was a place for training. Since it was a training ground, it was necessary to keep some powerful demon beasts for the disciples to achieve the goal of training. Therefore, the experts of the sects would not kill all the demon beasts here. As for a powerful creature like the Viper, it was the best opponent to train experts. Even if someone wanted to get rid of it, there would probably be a large number of people who would not be willing. This was also one of the reasons why the Viper wanted to leave this place. Yang Chen did not ask about this, but he could imagine it. It was also because of an existence like the Viper that Yang Chen was able to figure out the direction of the formation in a short period of time. From there, he could deduce where the earth element true essence was being led to. The people who set up this natural formation would never have thought that there would be a freak like Yang Chen, nor would they have thought that there would be such a heaven-defying beast-taming technique. Something that had been set up for hundreds of years had already been uncovered by Yang Chen. The earth element true essence that had been hidden for so many years might not belong to anyone in the near future. By the time Yang Chen found the right direction and began to move, the Viper had already coiled around Yang Chen's neck. Its long body had almost wrapped around Yang Chen's entire body. If an ordinary person were to see a 10-meter-long snake coiling around a person's body, they would probably be scared out of their wit. Of course, such a situation could not be easily seen in front of the cultivators. Fortunately, this was the viper's territory. Usually, unless it was an expert, no one would dare to come in. Yang Chen deliberately slowed down his speed, and even gave up flying on his sword. He switched to walking, while the viper sped up his cultivation of the transformation technique during this period of time. By the time Yang Chen walked out of the viper's territory, it was already a month later. During this period of time, the viper had already cultivated the transformation technique to perfection. Now, his body had shrunk from 10 meter long to 3 feet long, and it had shrunk by 10 times. A 3 feet long snake coiled around Yang Chen's arm. It was no longer as eye-catching. The moment he left the viper's territory, the viper let out a hissing sound and released his divine sense, as if he was informing an old friend that he had arrived at his territory. However, in the eyes of Yang Chen, this was more like a challenge than a notification. Chapter 2:15. The owner of this territory was a sand scorpion, who was also at the nascent soul stage and was not far from Viper. Listening to Viper's provocation, Yang Chen could not help but feel amused. Since Viper's body had shrunk, Yang Chen could now fly on his sword with him, and his speed was much faster. Along the way, Viper released that arrogant provocation along the way, as if he was afraid that Sand Scorpion would not know that he had rushed in. With that kind of arrogance, Yang Chen couldn't wait to beat up Viper. 2 hours later, Yang Chen was controlling the flight of the flying sword, but suddenly sensed a violent aura rushing towards him crazily. Almost without asking, it must be that Sand Scorpion was angered by Viper and rushed over to compete with Viper. Almost as soon as he sensed it, Yang Chen stopped flying and landed on the ground. Yang Chen felt that he was very unlucky to have brought such a troublemaker with him. He clearly said that he was going to ask for directions. Why did Viper still provoke him like this? An angry sand scorpion, and it was at the nascent soul stage, seemed to be able to kill him as soon as he made a move. Viper was scared by him at that time, but a crazy sand scorpion was not so easy to deal with. Just as he was hesitating whether he should turn around and leave, the situation did not allow Yang Chen to make a choice. In just a short while, the aura of Sand Scorpion was nearby. Although he could not see the shadow of Sand Scorpion, Yang Chen could be sure that Sand Scorpion had stopped in the vicinity and was secretly peeping at him. Boom! The desert behind him suddenly split open into a huge mouth, and a string of black beads rushed out of the desert. At the top of the string of beads, there was a sharp thorn that flashed with a cold light, and it fiercely stabbed towards Yang Chen. That was not a string of beads, it was clearly the tail of Sand Scorpion. Without any hesitation, Yang Chen grabbed the viper's tiny body and threw it towards the Sand Scorpion's stinger. At the same time, he sent a message with his divine sense. "This is the trouble you caused, so settle it yourself." Viper had never thought of asking Yang Chen to be his scapegoat. While flying in the air, he had already reverted to his original form. Its huge body wrapped around Sand Scorpion's tail, and then pulled out Sand Scorpion, whose body was hidden under the sand. 1,000 Zhonglong Viper and 1,000 Zhonglong Sand Scorpion were fighting each other crazily in the sand. Its tail spikes, sharp teeth, and pincers rose and fell one after another. Its huge body casually smashed into the ground, leaving a deep mark on the desert. Sand and dust filled the sky, and it was incomparably fierce. Both the Sand Scorpion and the Viper were of the earth attribute. In the desert of the desolate Sand Valley, they were like fish in water. From time to time, the two demonic beasts would use some magic power, and their bodies would appear and disappear in the desert. If not for Yang Chen's divine sense following them closely, he would have lost track of the two demonic beasts. Yang Chen had already risen into the air, and the ground could no longer accommodate him. There were traces of the two demonic beasts ravaging everywhere, and the desert within a radius of a few miles had been turned upside down. The loud roars could be heard from dozens of miles away. If not for the fact that the territories of the two demonic beasts were dangerous places, there might have been countless people rushing over to check it out. It seemed that the two demonic beasts had fought more than once. Their attacks were quite methodical, and they were all targeting each other's weaknesses. While attacking and defending, they were quite methodical, and had the demeanor of an expert. And once they started fighting, it seemed like there was no end to it. Yang Chen had already waited in the air for 4 hours, and there were still sounds of fighting. The battlefield had already moved more than 100 miles away from the original place. If the fight went on like this, when would it be over? Yang Chen did not want to have to deal with the trouble of cleaning up after both sides were injured. As a last resort, Yang Chen could only release the beast-taming spell again and began to communicate with the two demonic beasts who were fighting. I just want to ask for directions. I don't want to fight to the death. Can the two of you stop now? Not only did Yang Chen shout out loud, but he also sent out his divine sense along with his thoughts. It was the method of the beast-taming spell. Ask for directions? Is there any way to ask for directions here? As soon as Yang Chen spoke, the two demonic beasts immediately stopped fighting. Sand Scorpion asked in surprise, and only then did it realize the changes that had happened to the viper. It immediately roared at the viper, and the viper responded with a hissing sound. Yang Chen was far away and did not intervene in the communication between the two demonic beasts. However, looking at the viper changing its size and jumping up and down, he knew that it must be showing off the transformation skill that it had just obtained in front of its old rival. The sand scorpion opposite the viper also seemed to be shocked by the viper's change. It remained motionless and stared at the viper. From time to time, the thick carapace on its body spewed out a puff of mist. It was unknown whether it was angry or envious. After the two demonic beasts communicated for a while, the sand scorpion's huge body turned to Yang Chen. Then, Yang Chen sensed the thought of the sand scorpion. You want to pass me your transformation skill. Do you have the same condition? Is there such a good thing? Yang Chen nodded subconsciously. Before he could fully accept the matter, the sand scorpion's demon soul had already been sent over, and the ball of light was suspended in front of Yang Chen. After reaching the same agreement with the sand scorpion in a daze, Yang Chen suddenly realized that the demonic beasts were not the idiots that only acted on instinct like he had always thought. The viper and the sand scorpion's decisive and unhesitant style had subverted his view of the demonic beast. The subterranean beast, which looked gentle and harmless, made Yang Chen realize that the demonic beasts were cunning. After exchanging a wisp of the demon soul with the sand scorpion and giving it the transformation skill Jade Slip, the sand scorpion's body also grew in a puff of mist. It seemed that the sand scorpion and the viper's cultivation were about the same. Both of them had grown to this size during their first cultivation session. For Yang Chen, so far, he already had 2 strong bodyguards and thugs. It seemed that the next thing would be easier to handle and safer. Yang Chen finally pieced together a big piece of the map. In an instant, the spiritual energy direction of half of the barren sand valley appeared in his mind. Yang Chen had even marked out half of the location of the formation. As long as he could get a few more complete maps, he would be able to calculate the complete formation. Both the sand scorpion and the viper seemed to have the intention to go with Yang Chen. Looking at the 2 powerful demonic beasts, Yang Chen suddenly had an idea. If he could pull the 2 nascent soul realm demonic beasts into the forces of Chunyang Palace, wouldn't it mean that the strength of Chunyang Palace would be greatly improved? The problem was, would Chunyang Palace be willing to accept the 2 demonic beasts, and would the 2 demonic beasts be willing to join Chunyang Palace? Chapter 216. Yang Chen needed to think about how to solve this problem later. Now, Yang Chen was facing the natural array that the Taishaman had arranged for hundreds of years, as well as the fifth earth true essence that had been guided and gathered. These were things that Yang Chen urgently needed, and he must not let them fall into the hands of others. Then there was Chu Heng, the guy who had brought shame to Chunyang Palace, and he must not be allowed to live. With Viper and Sand Scorpion, Yang Chen was no longer worried about his safety in the desolate valley. At this moment, he had a small sand scorpion lying on one shoulder and a small viper coiled around the other arm. They were both inconspicuous little things. Occasionally, the sand scorpion would reveal a fierce aura, but this aura would soon disappear, as if it was extremely unstable. Yang Chen did not know what deal the sand scorpion and viper had reached, but Viper had taught the sand scorpion the trick of hiding its aura. The sand scorpion had just learned it, and could not control its aura steadily, which led to such a situation. After walking out of the sand scorpion's territory for more than a month, the sand scorpion's body had become very small. None of the trial cultivators in the desolate valley knew that the powerful demon beasts of the two fierce places had left their respective lairs. Next, Yang Chen wanted to go in the other direction of the desolate valley. As a trial ground, in addition to the powerful nascent soul demon beasts such as Viper and Sand Scorpion, there were also many gold core demon beasts such as subterranean beasts. The direction Yang Chen was going was an area where the cultivators were relatively concentrated. In this direction, there were no demon beasts at the level of Viper and Sand Scorpion, and the most powerful ones were only a few gold core demon beasts. With the help of two super powerful demon beasts, the few gold core demon beasts did not even dare to raise any conditions, and obediently handed over what they knew. However, Yang Chen did not let them work in vain. Each demon beast had 1,000-year-old ginseng, and no one was left empty-handed. With such benefits, these golden core stage demonic beasts were simply ecstatic. At least, Yang Chen could be sure that with his demon beast identity and such benefits, these demon beasts would not obstruct him in the future, and they might even help him. However, the trial fellows would suffer. Once these demon beasts absorbed the spirit power of the 1,000-year-old ginseng, their strength would definitely rise to a higher level, and the trial would be even more difficult. After a month, Yang Chen's map had covered 3/4 of the desolate valley. Now, Yang Chen's goal was the direction of the remaining 1/4. In this direction, there were the most cultivators and the least demon beasts. The most powerful demonic beasts here were only at the early gold core stage. Most of them were at the foundation establishment stage. It was also the place with the most foundation establishment cultivators. There were many cultivators, so naturally there were also many supply towns. On the way, Yang Chen also met a lot of cultivators, including rogue cultivators and disciples of various sections. When they saw Yang Chen and saw the Qianquan bag symbol on his waist, all the cultivators knew that he was a disciple of Chunyang Palace. The disciple of the Law Enforcement Hall of Chunyang Palace had an accident in the barren sand valley and became a laughing stock. It had been more than a year since anyone from Chunyang Palace had appeared here. The appearance of Yang Chen surprised everyone. What are the people from Chunyang Palace doing in the barren sand valley? Haven't you embarrassed yourself enough? At any time, there would always be people who wished for the world to be in chaos. Similarly, there would also be people who liked to step on others to show their existence. In a small town, as soon as Yang Chen entered, he heard such ridicule. As soon as the speaker's voice fell, there were countless people's wild laughter around him. Everyone's trial was hard. With Yang Chen, a person who everyone laughed at, coming to amuse everyone, who would care about the Chunyang Palace behind Yang Chen? Everyone laughed unscrupulously, and the loudest laughter came from a group of disciples of Taishimen. Facing the ridicule of almost all the people in the town, Yang Chen just smiled faintly and said nothing. These people were not worthy of Yang Chen's anger. Maybe the people of Taishimen were laughing happily now, but if they knew that the things that their sect had worked hard for hundreds of years would soon be taken by Yang Chen, would they still laugh so happily? As for those who laughed at Chunyang Palace, Yang Chen also had a way to deal with them. That was to kill Chu Heng in the barren sand valley, which was almost a slap in the face of these short-sighted guys. Sand Scorpion and Viper also heard the ridicule, but they did not know what was going on. They only knew that these people seemed to be unfriendly to Yang Chen. According to the characters of the two monsters, they could immediately raze the town to the ground in a moment, but they were forcibly blocked by Yang Chen. The world of human cultivators is not as simple as the world of monsters. You can observe more, but don't expose your identity casually. Otherwise, you can't go anywhere and can only be trapped in the barren sand valley. Yang Chen could only use this reason to make these two guys who did not care about the etiquette of the human world behave themselves. Yang Chen underestimated the intelligence of the two monsters. They climbed on Yang Chen's body and only communicated with their divine senses. They never spoke, but carefully observed the people around them, preparing for the possibility of integrating into them in the future. None of the guys in the nascent soul realm could be underestimated. There were no large territories of the monsters in this area, so they could only be pieced together with small territories. Moreover, many low-level monsters would be killed, and the territories would change frequently. Instead, the remaining places with the most cultivators were the most difficult to collect information. However, for Yang Chen, who had already mastered more than 80% of the spiritual power distribution in the barren sand valley, it was not a big deal for him to understand the rest of the information on foot. Moreover, the two monsters would find a few low-level monsters to help from time to time. Soon, Yang Chen had a complete spiritual power distribution map. The complete spiritual power distribution map also meant that the big formation set up by the Taishaman was laid bare in front of Yang Chen. According to the distribution of the spiritual power, Yang Chen had completely calculated the direction of the earth element energy. If possible, Yang Chen really wanted to collect it now. But everyone knew that the Taishaman had set up something for hundreds of years. How could they abandon it at this juncture? There must be an expert sitting in the eye of the big formation. The eye of the formation was where the earth element energy gathered, and it was also the most guarded place by the Taishaman. I want to know what's going on there. Yang Chen finally told the Viper his first request. You can hide your aura, and you can shrink your body. Can you sneak into that area and help me see what's going on inside? Chapter 217. For the Viper, this was not too difficult. It had changed its body size to that of the lowest Viper, concealed its aura, and crawled into the area. No one would notice it. At that time, Yang Chen was silently surrounded by the Viper, and Yang Chen did not notice it at all. Yang Chen, who stayed in the town and waited, found a room and locked himself in. Now that he knew the enemy's arrangement, the next step was to consider how to take action. Sitting upright, Yang Chen communicated with Sand Scorpion, who was crawling on him. Tell me, if someone has been guarding something for hundreds of years, is it better for us to rob it or steal it secretly? He had never regarded the two Yuanying realm demon beasts as ignorant fellows, and now he was asking with sincerity. That depends on what you want to achieve. Sand Scorpion's divine thought came directly to him. Do you just want to get the thing, or do you want to make the other party suffer so much when you get the thing? First of all, we have to get the thing. It would be best if we can make the other party feel pain. Yang Chen did not expect Sand Scorpion to have such an idea. Delighted, he immediately communicated with him. Robbing something is actually just for a moment of pleasure. It seems that you have vented your anger, but there will be many subsequent troubles. Sand Scorpion's words made Yang Chen look at the demon beasts in a new light. If we can steal something without anyone noticing, and the guards do not know why, they will have to bear the pain of losing something in endless confusion. That will be the most uncomfortable thing. Feeling the thought passed to him by Sand Scorpion, a picture suddenly flashed in Yang Chen's mind. The Taishaman looked up and down at the fifth earth spiritual essence that had suddenly disappeared without a trace, feeling baffled. Hundreds of years of hard work had been destroyed in an instant, but they could not find a reasonable explanation. The arrangement that they had spent a lot of effort and consumed the resources of the sect had been in vain, and even led to internal suspicion and infighting. Perhaps such an ending would make Yang Chen feel happier. The Pure Yang Palace had a renegade disciple Chu Heng, which made the reputation of the Pure Yang Palace discredited. What would happen if the greatest heaven sect's Yuanying stage masters couldn't explain it because of this incident? Since the Taishaman had already made a move on Chu Heng's matter, Yang Chen did not mind making a move here. It was just strange for Yang Chen that Yang Lan, who caused his life's misfortune in his previous life, had been silent. Could it be that this guy hasn't made a name for himself in Taishaman? Yang Lan's matter was put aside for the time being. Yang Chen now needed to keep an eye on two things. One was the arrangement near the Eye of the Needle, and the other was the whereabouts of Chu Heng. With the Taishaman taking care of him in the desolate valley, Chu Heng hid very well. It would take some effort to find him. Also, do you think you can snatch something so brazenly? Sand Scorpion's ridiculing thought came to him. Even Viper has to sneak in. It seems that your current strength is still not enough. Sand Scorpion judged Yang Chen's cultivation from the strength of Yang Chen's divine sense. Since Yang Chen's divine sense was only at the peak of Jindan stage, Sand Scorpion did not think that Yang Chen was the opponent of those masters. This was a blow to Yang Chen, but Yang Chen did not dwell on this issue for long. In fact, the gap in strength had forced Yang Chen to choose a sneaky path, and he could not rob it by force. Viper was very fast and silent. In just 3 days, he had familiarized himself with the situation near the Eye of the Array. Back in the hut where Yang Chen was, Yang Chen immediately had a detailed map of the Eye of the Array in his mind. The Taishaman attached great importance to the Eye of the Array, and there were at least 3 Yuanying stage masters in charge. But most of the time they would meditate and cultivate in the center, and few people would disturb them. There were also a few Jindan stage masters and a group of Foundation establishment stage disciples around. In fact, that place now looked like a small town. The security was tight, but it looked inconspicuous. What was different was that this was an exclusive town for the disciples of the Taishaman. Except for the disciples of the Taishaman, no one else could enter. It was absolutely impossible for Yang Chen to sneak in. Together with the two of us, we can at most contain those 3 masters. You are no match for the rest. Viper and Sand Scorpion had made the same judgment, and they did not give Yang Chen any face. They are not like us, and they are merciful to our fellow demons. You can't sneak in. In the eyes of Viper and Sand Scorpion, Yang Chen was just a green bull monster in human form, and his strength was not strong. They had already shown mercy to him. But I don't need to sneak in. Faced with Viper's worry, Yang Chen smiled innocently. The purpose of the formation that was set up hundreds of years ago was to guide the earth element true essence in the barren sand valley to the formation Eye, so that someone in the Taishaman could refine it. The problem was that the earth element true essence took so much effort to operate because it was difficult to guide. Over the past hundreds of years, the earth element true essence did not completely gather according to the wishes of the people who set up the formation in Taishaman. According to the distribution of spiritual power that Yang Chen collected from the demonic beasts, Yang Chen could even calculate the current distribution of the earth element true essence. Yes, the earth element true essence was gathering at the center of the formation Eye, but after hundreds of years, it had not gathered there. It could only be said that it was still on the way. This gave Yang Chen an opportunity. Since the 5th earth true essence had not yet converged, and those people were foolishly waiting at the Eye of the formation, wasn't that waiting to be intercepted on the road? The 2 demonic beasts had been in the barren sand valley for many years, but they had no way to distinguish the earth element true essence. After all, their knowledge was limited. Not to mention the 2 monsters, even if it was the people in the greatest heaven sect, They didn't know what kind of expert had given them. They knew that there was the fifth earth true essence here, but they couldn't accurately find the almost filamentous fifth earth true essence from the desolate valley that covered thousands of miles. They could only rely on this kind of formation to slowly collect it. But Yang Chen was different. He had the knowledge of a zenith heaven golden immortal, and the description of the earth element true essence, so it was easy for him to distinguish what he needed. The only concern was that it would take a long time to collect the earth element true essence. Yang Chen needed to collect all the earth element true essence under the eyes of these people without being discovered, which was extremely difficult. If a tiger doesn't show its power, you'll think I'm a sick cat. I'll let you see what a real formation is. Yang Chen was despised by viper and sand scorpion one after another. He also had the idea of subduing them. Even if he could not beat them, he had to let them see his shortcomings in other ways. This was very good for attracting two powerful demonic beasts to join Chunyang Palace. Chapter 218. The great formation of the Taishaman was indeed huge, and it was arranged naturally according to the terrain. However, in the eyes of Yang Chen, this was not the toughest part. As long as there was a detailed distribution of the spiritual power, Yang Chen could calculate the direction of the formation and the direction of the earth element spiritual essence. After all, the Taishaman had arranged it secretly and did not dare to openly announce that they were determined to obtain the earth element spiritual essence. To be honest, the barren sand valley was not the sphere of influence of the Taishaman, but the territory of another big sect, the Five Elements sect. However, the earth spiritual power here was strong. The Five Elements sect generously allowed cultivators to train here, but it did not mean that the Taishaman could occupy the earth element spiritual essence here. Speaking of which, the Taishaman were also thieves, but they were relatively subtle. Yang Chen was sure that the Taishaman would not dare to make a big fuss, so he had the possibility of tampering with the formation. The formation was arranged according to the natural terrain. Those who did not have a deep understanding of formations would not be able to see it. Yang Chen even suspected that there was no one in this world who could understand this formation except the guy who set it up by the Taishaman. Perhaps the Taishaman thought that it was foolproof, but the formation had a fatal flaw. It was not too difficult to modify such a natural formation, especially in the eyes of Yang Chen, a zenith heaven golden immortal. You want to modify this formation? The viper and sand scorpion certainly knew about the existence of this formation, and Yang Chen did not hide it from them. When they heard that Yang Chen could modify the formation, the viper and sand scorpion could not help but be shocked. Demonic beasts were born from the spiritual chi of heaven and earth. They absorbed the essence of the sun and the moon, and were powerful because of the spiritual chi of heaven and earth. Most of their cultivation was based on instinct. Not only could Yang Chen's green ox recognize formations, but he could also modify them. Furthermore, he had something as good as the transformation art. Now, he had more speculations about Yang Chen's origins. This was the effect that Yang Chen wanted. He wanted Viper and Sand Scorpion to be curious about his ability to use arrays to refine weapons and elixirs. Then, he would slowly pull these two powerful guys to the side of Chunyang Palace. Anyway, Yang Chen still knew a lot about the cultivation methods of the demon cultivators in this world. At least, the beast-controlling secret art was a good thing that made the demon beasts unable to stop. As long as they found a powerful pet, their strength would immediately double. When the Taishaman set up the formation, they had to explore this place for at least 10 years before they could figure out the direction of the spiritual energy. With a smile, Yang Chen explained what he was going to do. I only need to modify the direction of the spiritual energy in dozens of key points to expose the earth element true essence. By then, the Five Elements sect and the Taishaman will definitely have a good show to watch. Let's just wait and see. Although Sand Scorpion and the Viper had done such shady things before, none of them had done it on such a large scale to trick a sect. The two demon beasts were even more excited than Yang Chen himself. All these years, they had been used as practice targets. When had they ever felt so proud and elated? Moreover, he had made these people suffer a great loss without them knowing. The two demon beasts were almost urging Yang Chen to start setting up the formation immediately. Of course, it was not easy to change such a huge formation. Even with Yang Chen's knowledge in formations, he had locked himself in his room and calculated for more than 2 months. Sand Scorpion and the Viper were definitely the local snakes among the local snake. Putting everything else aside, they could almost find a place in their respective territories with their eyes closed. Yang Chen pointed out the tasks in their respective territories. In less than 20 days, under the forceful interference of the two nascent soul realm demon beasts, the direction of the earth veins was forcefully changed. Although the deviation was only a few hundred feet, it was fatal to the formation set up by the Taishanmen. Not to mention anything else, just finding the place where the formation was in disorder would take a crazy amount of time. The two demon beasts were very smart. Not only did they change the earth veins in their territories, they also changed a lot of the veins that were not in their territories, covering the entire barren sand valley. Under Yang Chen's plan, some of these earth veins were forcefully broken by the two demon beasts fighting for territory, and some were absorbed by Yang Chen using the purified medicine bottle. There were also some Taishanmen disciples who were unaware of the situation. When they discovered the benefits, they would swarm up and take the initiative to set up formations or magical treasures, cutting off the spiritual energy in certain areas. All in all, there were too many to count. Next, it was Yang Chen's turn. He went to a few places, and with the help of the materials used to set up the formations, he slightly modified them. Thus, the fifth earth true essence, which was originally gathering at the eye of the formation, had quietly moved dozens of miles away and gathered at several other locations. In one of those locations, where the territories of the Viper and the Sand Scorpion met, Yang Chen had already set up an underground space with the Viper and the Sand Scorpion, steadily waiting for the fifth earth true essence to slowly flow through. At any time, it was always easier to destroy than to build, especially for this kind of formation. The more he did not want others to know, the more he had to conceal it. Yang Chen did not care whether it would be discovered or not. For him, as long as he could refine a part of the fifth earth true essence and then combine it with the fifth earth true essence, he would be able to cultivate as the sun god in the future. There was no need to conceal it at all. Others might not know about the fifth earth true essence, but Yang Chen did. He could even leak the news of the fifth earth true essence after successfully refining it. At that time, the Taishanmen who had been preparing for hundreds of years would not be satisfied. There were also earth elementalists in the Five Elements sect, and they would spare no effort to fight for the things in their own territory. At that time, Yang Chen would be able to witness a wonderful fight between dragons and tigers. Of course, this effect could only be achieved by guiding the fifth earth true essence for hundreds of years. However, that was a hidden arrangement, and Yang Chen did not care about it. He directly pushed the power of the formation to the maximum. In just a month, the aura of the pure fifth earth true essence had begun to erupt in several other places, which would soon attract the attention of a large number of people. At this time, Yang Chen was sitting peacefully in the underground location he had set up. He began to face a wisp of fifth earth true essence that had gathered and was ready to refine it. One should not be too greedy. If you want to eat alone, you will get a stomachache. Yang Chen seemed to be instructing the Sand Scorpion and the Viper. He said with a smile, "You too guard me. I want to absorb this fifth earth true essence. After I refine these, it will be your turn." What about the other places? The Viper obviously did not want the thing that they had worked so hard to find to be taken advantage of by others. No matter who refines it, let him keep it if he is pleasing to the eye. If he is not pleasing to the eye, kill him and take it. Yang Chen's words clearly expressed his thoughts. Chapter 219. Recently, several extremely pure Earth attribute spiritual energies had appeared in the barren sand valley. This kind of pure Earth element energy quickly attracted the attention of the cultivators in the barren sand valley. Unfortunately, this Earth element energy could not be refined without a special cultivation method, which disappointed many people. However, the news began to spread like wildfire. For a while, the barren sand valley suddenly became a gathering place. A large number of Earth elementalists from the Five Elements sect directly rushed into the barren sand valley. After several experts identified one of the locations, they immediately came to the conclusion that this pure Earth attribute spiritual energy was actually Earth element energy. As soon as the news spread, almost all the cultivators went crazy. Almost on the same day that they received the exact news, the Five Elements sect immediately announced that the Earth element energy in the barren sand valley belonged to the Five Elements sect, and other sects were not allowed to touch it. At the same time, they sent disciples to seal off several other locations. After hundreds of years of planning, they originally planned to collect and refine the Earth element energy under the nose of the Five Elements sect. Suddenly, the situation changed. How could the Taishaman be willing? Before the Five Elements sect made their move, they had already occupied a few spots where the Earth element energy emerged at lightning speed. However, there were so many locations that they could not occupy all of them. Fighting with the people of the Five Elements sect in the territory of the Five Elements sect? This was definitely a slap in the face of the Five Elements sect. However, at this moment, in the face of the Earth element energy, they could not care less. Originally, the Taishaman had prepared to collect the Earth element energy. Everything was very sufficient. They directly began to forcibly collect the Earth element energy in several locations. Without the appropriate cultivation method, they could not refine it. However, they could first collect it into some containers and then refine it later when they had the cultivation method. The Five Elements sect was caught unprepared. The Taishaman had frantically collected the Earth element energy in at least 4 locations. However, when they finished collecting, they found that they had been surrounded by the experts of the Five Elements sect. It seemed that they were ready to take action at any moment. The Five Elements sect directly sent out 6 nascent soul ancestors. 2 of them occupied 2 locations, and the other 4 blocked the people of the Taishaman in the barren sand valley. The other rogue cultivators in the desolate sand valley all knew that they couldn't participate in the affairs of the 2 great sects, so they wisely hid to the side and watched the show. There hadn't been any major events in the cultivation world for over 100 years. The confrontation between the 2 major sects was definitely something worth writing about. The higher-ups of the 2 sects started to negotiate almost immediately. The 5th Earth True Essence was within the territory of the Five Elements sect. Although the Five Elements sect had never attached importance to this place before, now that such a good thing had appeared, of course, they would not give up even an inch of it. He would also have to hand over all the Earth element energies that the Taishaman had collected from the barren sands valley. How could the Taishaman agree? They had planned for hundreds of years, and it would be harvest season in a few more decades. But suddenly, something like this happened. How could they be willing? Of course he had to fight for what was right. It was just that it was impossible for the Taishaman to quietly monopolize it. They could only share a part of the benefits. After all, the Five Elements sect was the host, and the 2 great sects were first-class sections. If they fought, wouldn't the world be in chaos? Neither side wanted to make such a big enemy, so they could only sit down and negotiate. Seeing that the 2 sides were about to reach a settlement, everyone took a step back and made some compromises, but the appearance of a formation map directly made this harmonious atmosphere disappear in an instant. It was a formation map that looked old, but it showed the complete distribution of spiritual power in the desolate sand valley and the complete formation that was arranged using the natural terrain. This formation map happened to be obtained by several disciples of the Five Elements sect. It seemed that the process of obtaining it was a coincidence caused by some people's negligence. When the sect master of the 5 Elements sect saw the formation map, he immediately gathered a few elders. In less than a day, they confirmed the authenticity of the formation. Furthermore, with the influence of the 5 Elements sect, they immediately verified the existence of the formation in an aboveboard manner. If it weren't for some recent events that happened to change the direction of some earth veins, this formation would not have been exposed at all. Such a large formation was arranged in their own backyard. This was no longer a slap in the face of the 5 Elements sect, but a direct draw of the blood of the 5 Elements sect. Almost everyone in the 5 Elements sect was filled with anger when they thought that something that originally belonged to them had been coveted by someone for hundreds of years. In fact, it was easy to guess who arranged the formation. For hundreds of years, the sect that invested the most in the desolate Sand Valley was obviously the Taishanmen, who had recently competed with the 5 Elements sect for the Earth Element True Essence. If this could be tolerated, what couldn't? They were all from several supersects, and they usually exchanged what they needed. Unexpectedly, hundreds of years ago, someone wanted to steal from their own doorstep, and even arranged it in such a sneaky manner. If it weren't exposed recently, the 5 Elements sect wouldn't have a share of the Earth Element True Essence after a few decades. The 5 Elements sect almost overturned the negotiation table, and all the disciples of the Taishanmen in the desolate Sand Valley were detained and not allowed to leave. The situation was on the verge of breaking out, but both sides still maintained the last bit of restraint, and no one made the first move. But looking at the situation, as long as there was a spark, it would be enough to start a war. The top leaders of the Taishanmen were in a terrible situation. Originally, it was a secret that only their sect knew, but suddenly, it became a secret that everyone knew. Moreover, they had directly offended the 5 Elements sect, who had always been on good terms with them. Something that was originally ownerless suddenly became ownerless. It was a big taboo in the cultivation world to blatantly steal something that belonged to another sect. This time, the reputation of the Greatest Heaven sect was directly smelly to their grandmother's house. Other sects even began to investigate in their own territories, to see if there were any disciples of the Taishanmen frequently coming and going, and if they were eyeing something in their own sect. Some sects had already sent notes to the Taishanmen, asking if the Taishanmen had taken a fancy to something in their territory, and if so, to avoid damaging the relationship between the two sections. The only thing to blame was the location of the desolate Sand Valley, which happened to be at the edge of the 5 Elements sect. This was the source of the dispute. If it was really ownerless, no one would have anything to say. But unfortunately, things happened so coincidentally, from being reasonable to being unreasonable. There were only 2 paths in front of the leader of the Taishanmen. One was to apologize and return the Earth Element spiritual ether that was in his possession to the 5 Elements sect. But this would mean that hundreds of years of hard work would be wasted, and he would also have to admit his mistake, and from then on, he would have to lower his head whenever he saw the 5 Elements sect. The other was to refuse to return the Earth Element spiritual ether, and both sides would fight to the death. But this option was not reasonable, and it would give the other sects the impression that the Taishanmen were rude and unreasonable. On one side was profit, and on the other side was face. It was really difficult to make a decision. Chapter 220. Yang Chen, who directed the show, did not pay any attention to what was happening at the moment. He was at the border of the territory of the Viper and the Sand Scorpion, cultivating the Earth Element true art and refining the Earth Element energy without anyone disturbing him. The place he chose was just too good. 2 nascent soul-level demonic beasts were fighting for territory here, and those with slightly weaker cultivation base would not dare to come close at all. As for the powerful cultivators, they were confronting each other, and no one had the time to pay attention to what was happening here. Of course, the most important thing was that the Earth Element energy emanating from this place was not as thick as the ones in other places. Under the refinement of Yang Chen, the people outside could not sense the aura here at all, allowing him to cultivate with ease. The earth element true art was one of the great yin-yang 5 elemental arts that Yang Chen had planned for himself. It was much stronger than any earth element cultivation technique that Yang Chen had ever heard of before. Furthermore, the conditions for its cultivation were extremely harsh. First of all, the earth element energy was a must, as it would be impossible to cultivate without the earth element origin energy. The acquired earth spirit root was full value, coupled with a complete cultivation secret art, coupled with enough fifth earth true essence. Yang Chen had met all the conditions. However, when he began to cultivate the earth element true art, he still encountered many difficulties. After all, he was only a fire cultivator in his previous life, and his understanding of the other elemental cultivation techniques was not as thorough as that of the fire element. It took Yang Chen at least a month to barely cross the threshold of a high-level cultivation technique like the earth element true art. A wisp of earth element energy, as thin as a gossamer, was refined and absorbed by Yang Chen from the barren sand valley and integrated into Yang Chen's body. This wisp of fifth earth true essence was worthy of being the original spirit power of the fifth earth attribute. As soon as it entered Yang Chen's meridians, it directly replaced all the previous fifth earth spirit power of Yang Chen. Like a kindling, it quickly assimilated the original fifth earth spirit power. Instead of assimilation, it was the process of diluting this wisp of earth element energy with Yang Chen's original earth element energy. However, this dilution was accompanied by a process of being slightly transformed by the fifth earth true essence. Yang Chen's earth element spiritual energy, which had reached the foundation establishment stage and had been refined by the 5 elements reverse secret of yin and yang for a long time, suddenly diluted and assimilated into earth element true essence. It was as if the soft floating soil was suddenly compressed into a stone by a great force. In just a moment, the originally abundant earth element spiritual energy was directly compressed to 1/10 of the original, and could not even fill the meridians. This was not a very pure fifth earth true essence. After all, it had only been more than a month since the formation was changed. The fifth earth true essence scattered in the barren sand valley was not only condensed into fifth earth true essence, but also ordinary earth attribute spiritual power. Even so, it was enough to improve the quality of Yang Chen's earth element energy by a few times. The next thing was relatively simple. After passing this hurdle, what Yang Chen had to do was to continue to absorb enough fifth earth true essence to reach a sufficient amount of qualitative change, and completely transform Yang Chen's fifth earth element spiritual power into fifth earth true essence. There was no day or night in cultivation. When Yang Chen concentrated on cultivating this fifth earth true essence, he did not even feel the passage of time. Until the moment when his body had absorbed enough fifth earth true essence, it began to change dramatically. Boom! Yang Chen's consciousness once again entered his own sea of consciousness. Once again, the sea of consciousness underwent great changes. At both ends of the Scarlet River, there was a layer of solid land, covering the entire sea of consciousness. The sea of consciousness was divided into clear layers, with the Scarlet River and the fifth earth as the benchmark, and finally separated completely from the top. The earth core fire and the true sun fire were located at the top and bottom respectively. The Penglai divine wood, which was originally connected to the heaven and earth, finally had a place to take root at this moment. The thick roots directly plunged into this piece of fifth earth, becoming stronger and stronger. This time, although the sea of consciousness did not expand again, it was more solid. With the solid fifth earth as the foundation, whether it was the Scarlet River or other things, it was like having a foundation. This was not comparable to the expansion of the sea of consciousness alone. At this step, Yang Chen could say that his spiritual awareness had condensed to the realm of nascent soul. Perhaps if there was any opportunity or continued cultivation of the three purities' secret art, Yang Chen's spiritual awareness would break through the Yuanying stage in the foundation establishment stage. The Yin-Yang five elements secret art finally had a kind of spiritual power. When Yang Chen woke up and looked at it carefully, he immediately found that his strength had increased crazily. The 108 spiritual power threads of the fifth earth spirit power were all converted into fifth earth true essence, and the power directly increased by several times. With a punch, the underground space where Yang Chen was located seemed to have suddenly detonated a large yield bomb. With a bang, the entire space was directly squeezed into a sphere by this sudden burst of fifth earth spirit power. With Yang Chen's fist as the center, it spread around. The original space directly expanded several times. So powerful? After so many days of contact, Sand Scorpion and Viper basically understood the strength of Yang Chen. Compared to them, he was really weak and pitiful. But now, after feeling this punch, the two beasts almost jumped up at the same time. They also began to look forward to the fifth earth true essence. Yang Chen did not eat it alone. Both beasts were earth-attributed beasts. By instinct, they could almost sense the fifth earth true essence. It was just that because of the previous agreement, they had been guarding Yang Chen, resisting the desire for the fifth earth true essence. Now that Yang Chen had completed it, the two beasts finally had the opportunity to feel the power of the fifth earth true essence. Compared with humans, the physical conditions of the beasts were very different. The fifth earth true essence that Yang Chen needed to absorb and refine with the fifth earth true essence directly rushed into the bodies of Viper and Sand Scorpion and began to frantically strengthen the physique of the two beasts, changing the spiritual power in their bodies. The two beasts even only needed to sleep, waiting for their bodies to be cleansed by the fifth earth true essence. This unique condition was not something that Yang Chen could envy. However, this strengthened Yang Chen's determination to pull the two beasts into Chunyang Palace. Two beasts in the nascent soul realm with the fifth earth origin spiritual power could definitely make the power of Chunyang Palace rise to a higher level. This time, Yang Chen waited for 2 months before the two beasts woke up from their sleep. After the cleansing of the fifth earth true essence, the strength of the two beasts had completely improved to a level. Even the transformation skill began to be able to temporarily transform into a human form, but it was not stable enough. After a while, they would return to their original form. You are not a demon, nor are you a green ox. After waking up from a deep sleep, the first thing Viper did was to ask Yang Chen in a choppy voice, "You are a human cultivator, right?" When Viper asked this question, Sand Scorpion next to him also turned into a middle-aged man in gray armor, with a strong killing intent in his eyes, staring at Yang Chen. Chapter 221. Viper had also turned into a middle-aged man, but he looked a little tender, slightly younger than Sand Scorpion. His body was also close-fitting armor made of his own fine scales, and he looked more feminine than Sand Scorpion. Viper's eyes were unfriendly, and so was Sand Scorpion. The two monsters seemed to be very dissatisfied with Yang Chen deceiving them. They couldn't see it before, but the way Yang Chen absorbed the earth element true essence was completely different from the two monsters, so they could distinguish it. "Yes, I'm a human cultivator." At this point, Yang Chen did not hide his identity at all. "I'm an inner mountain disciple of Chunyang Palace, Yang Chen. I'm here to meet the two seniors again." "Why do you have the aura of my demon race?" Sand Scorpion, who had transformed into a big man, asked. His carapace had transformed into a full body armor, which was very fitting. Even the big pincers and tail could not be seen, and he looked completely like a human. "Of course, I have some relationship with the demon race." Yang Chen smiled and replied simply. He would not tell the whole story. The two monsters did not doubt this at all. Yang Chen's green ox aura could not be wrong, and he even had a demon soul. However, Yang Chen was a human, which made the two monsters very puzzled. The reason why they asked this question was also because they were dissatisfied with Yang Chen's previous concealment. However, although the eyes of the two monsters were not friendly, there was no killing intent. At least in front of Yang Chen, no one could hide their killing intent. He did not have to worry about the two monsters making a move. If he wanted to make a move, he would have done it when he was refining the earth element true essence. Why would he wait until now? Moreover, everyone had been very happy these days. The two monsters had also seen a lot of things that they had never seen before, and they had also obtained the earth element true essence. Even if he asked them to kill Yang Chen, they would not do it. Two seniors, I think you also like to go to the vast thousand world to have a good look. Why not leave with this junior? Yang Chen seized the opportunity to invite them. My Chunyang Palace will definitely welcome the two seniors. A sect of human cultivators will accept two Yao beasts like us? Viper frowned. Sand Scorpion too, revealed a puzzled look. Although Yang Chen's words were very attractive, the two demonic beasts were unable to accept it immediately due to their deeply rooted opposing views. I'm not sure about other sects, but Chunyang Palace can give it a try. Yang Chen wasn't being arrogant and conceited. It was just that all the major sects had their own mountain-guarding spirit beast. With the strength of the Viper and the Sand Scorpion, when they arrived at the Chunyang Palace, they would not be reduced to beasts guarding the mountain. As long as they were willing to abide by the rules, coupled with Yang Chen's efforts, they could definitely have a place in Chunyang Palace. The Viper and the Sand Scorpion looked at each other and seemed to be a little tempted. However, they had not completely made up their minds. They just looked at Yang Chen and gave an ambiguous answer. Let's go out and have a look first. Maybe we can give it a try. Yang Chen knew that this was not something that could be achieved overnight, so he was not in a hurry. Anyway, since they had agreed to give it a try, there would be plenty of opportunities when the time came. Since the two demonic beasts had made up their minds, they could just take them away. Of course, the two demonic beasts could not leave quietly. Under Yang Chen's suggestion, an earth-shattering battle broke out between the two demonic beasts, which alarmed almost everyone in the barren sand valley. Then, the two demonic beasts seemed to be injured and disappeared. Later, some people speculated that the battle should have been caused by the discovery of the earth element true essence on the edge of the two demonic beasts' territories. This was all in the future. The reality was that the two demonic beasts had disappeared since then. However, before leaving, Yang Chen still had one thing to deal with. The traitor Chu Heng had not been executed yet. Since Yang Chen knew that he was still hiding in the barren sand valley, he would naturally not let him go. It took Yang Chen 4 months to refine the earth element true essence, and another 2 months for the two demonic beasts. During this time, Yang Chen had no idea what was going on outside. The two sects were at loggerheads, and the atmosphere in the barren sand valley was very bad. If he appeared rashly, it might lead to an unexpected disaster. Fortunately, in addition to the two sects, there were many people from other sects who came to see what was going on. Many rogue cultivators planned to see if they could get a share of this event. The appearance of Yang Chen was not conspicuous at all. In particular, Yang Chen also used the pretense of hunting down the traitor Chu Heng. As long as he did not have any ideas about the earth element true essence, no one would care about him. A junior in the foundation establishment stage. The Five Elements sect and the Taishanmen finally made a move. 3 months ago, several junior disciples met with each other and had some disagreements. The two sides were originally not on good terms, and finally, a fight broke out. The death and injury of several junior disciples completely ignited the resentment between the two sides. With the participation of several Yuanying realm ancestors in the battle, the situation was out of control. The sect leader of the Taishanmen finally paid the price for his hesitation. Originally, he wanted to delay for a while, at least to collect some earth element true essence under the nose of the Five Elements sect, and then return a part of it. The sect would keep a part of it, and this matter would be over. It was a good plan, but the plan could not keep up with the changes. Because of the friction between several junior disciples, his wishful thinking was finally completely broken. In just 2 months, one Yuanying realm ancestor of the Five Elements sect was seriously injured, and 2 were slightly injured, while one Yuanying realm ancestor of the Taishaman died, and 2 were slightly injured. As for those low-level disciples, they were even more dead and injured. In such a period, the loss of a Yuanying realm ancestor simply made the Taishaman feel distressed. The matter between the two sects was no longer just a matter between the two sections. Once the war expanded, the slaughter between the righteous sects might cause the devil sects to take advantage of the situation. At that time, people would be plunged into misery and suffering. Therefore, very soon, a few big sects joined forces and mediated between the two sides. Even if the Taishaman were overbearing, it was impossible to completely ignore the joint pressure of several other major sections. Moreover, this matter was also a matter of the Taishaman snatching food from the tiger's mouth in the territory of the Five Elements sect. It was not a glorious and reasonable thing to do. At this point, the Taishaman could only bite the bullet and swallow it. They ate this loss in silence, and began to accept the mediation of several major sections. The ownership of the earth element true essence had also become the focus of dispute between the two sides. In order to compensate for the losses of both sides, and at the same time to take care of the feelings of all sides, this time the Taishaman estimated that in addition to bowing their heads and admitting their mistakes, they also had to pay a lot of compensation. Yang Chun appeared during this period of truce between the two sides. Although the Taishaman and the Five Elements sect were hostile to each other, they were very restrained and did not dare to provoke him easily. At least when Yang Chun appeared again in the small town where he had lived, the disciples of the Taishaman no longer had the spirit to ridicule Yang Chun. Chapter 222. Where are we going to find the guy you mentioned? Sand Scorpion and Viper were still unable to transform into humans, so they still maintained their original forms and let Yang Chun bring them along. The two monsters were now very good at hiding themselves. No one noticed the strength of the two monsters even when they were so close. At most, they thought that Yang Chun had caught the two little monsters in the barren sand valley. Even the little Taishaman know that he is hiding in the barren sand valley. Presumably, the smarter ones definitely know where Chu Heng is hiding. Yang Chen's smile was a little smug. In the eyes of the two monsters, it was a different scene. It seemed that they had promised to help Yang Chun 3 times. Up until now, Viper was the only one who had taken action. It seemed that this mission had landed on their heads again. Don't worry, as long as you catch him, I will take care of the interrogation. I think that a Jindan stage master should know. The meaningful smile on Yang Chen's face was almost undisguised. He had already calculated all of this in advance. However, we have to find out Chu Heng's whereabouts. This will count as one action. The two monsters were experts at the Yuanying realm. In the barren sand valley, which was an earth attribute territory, it was almost a piece of cake to work together to capture a Jindan stage master. With Yang Chen's plan, it was really not difficult to secretly capture a Jindan stage master who was alone among the Taishaman. Who would have thought that when several major sects joined forces to mediate, someone would attack the Taishaman? Whether it was the two monsters or Yang Chen, it was easy to make a hole in the ground in the hidden underground. Yang Chen conveniently set up a small formation to disrupt the aura. In this way, no one would discover the interference during the interrogation process. The two monsters hid the unlucky Jindan stage master in the hole. Under their control, the poor guy did not even have the strength to resist, and his face was full of horror. How could he have imagined that his patrol in the desolate sand valley would suddenly turn into such a situation? When he saw the mark of Yang Chen's Chunyang Palace, the Jedon stage master seemed to realize something, but his power had been completely sealed. Even in the face of Yang Chen, a small foundation establishment disciple, he could not resist at all. You are Yang Chun of Chunyang Palace. There was only one disciple of Chunyang Palace in the barren sand valley. The Jindan stage master immediately recognized Yang Chen's identity. He struggled for a few times and suddenly shouted at Yang Chun, "It turns out that Chunyang Palace has begun to collude with the demon beast. You are indeed a remnant of the Devil Gate. Whether I'm a remnant of the evil cult or not has nothing to do with you anymore." Yang Chen smiled and walked forward without a care in the world. He placed his hand on the head of the guy who couldn't dodge at all. "What do you want?" "I, the Taishanman, will not let you go." The Jedon stage master was scared out of his wits. Yang Chen actually colluded with the demon beast. Maybe he had some shameful means. When he thought that this was going to happen to him, even if he was already a Jedon stage master, he couldn't help but be afraid. "I don't know if the Taishanman will let me go." Yang Chen's fingers were close to the guy's baihui, and he smiled at him. "But you have to believe me, I will never let the Taishanman go." After that, he had already launched the spirit-shaking technique. This time, the spirit-shaking technique was mixed with the bloody river in the Sea of Consciousness, and it directly rushed into the guy's Sea of Consciousness from the baihui. Without waiting for Yang Chen to use his means again, the other party's eyes suddenly flashed with a frightening light. His face seemed to have seen something terrifying. His mouth only made two sounds, then his head was directly crooked, his eyes were wide open, and he directly stopped breathing. "Hey!" Yang Chen didn't expect this result. He hurriedly patted the unlucky master's cheek, only to find that he had completely stopped breathing. He was actually scared to death by the impact of the blood-colored river. Viper and Sand Scorpion did not directly face Yang Chen's spirit-shaking technique. Seeing this situation, the two demon beasts looked at each other with a slightly frightened look in their eyes. Even if the two of them could easily capture this Jedon stage master, they didn't have the ability to scare people to death with just their divine sense. "Sorry, I didn't know what to do. It seems that you have to work hard again." Yang Chen could only spread his hands, indicating his innocence. How would I know that he, a Jedon stage master, would be so easily scared? The two demon beasts didn't say anything, turned around and left, and continued to find the next unlucky guy. Looking at the backs of the two demon beasts, a smile also appeared on Yang Chen's face. Some things were slowly instilled in them, and they absolutely could not escape the fate of joining Chunyang Palace. The second unlucky guy appeared in front of Yang Chen again. This time, Yang Chen had learned his lesson from last time. He only used a little bit of the bloody river, and it directly made the Jedon stage master lose his spirit. Yang Chen answered every question without hiding anything. Chu Heng had been taken care of by the Taishanman, and even when the law enforcement disciples of Chunyang Palace came to the door, the Taishanman also secretly helped Chu Heng. The place where Chu Heng injured the 4 law enforcement hall disciples last time, there was a small formation in the large formation arranged by the Greatest Heaven sect, which could secretly help people who occupy a specific place to deal with the enemy in the formation. Chu Heng relied on this to defeat the 4 law enforcement disciples of Chunyang Palace. Otherwise, how could he, who had the water attribute, fight against 4 people alone in the barren sand valley? Now, Chu Heng was still hiding in this formation, practicing while thinking about the final solution. It was definitely not a solution to hide for a lifetime. The Taishanman seemed to intend to let Chu Heng change his appearance and join the Taishanman. As a result, some preparatory work had not been completed, so it had been delayed until now. Of course, this was obviously not the right time. The Taishanman could not even take care of themselves, let alone Chu Heng. Without the protection of the Taishanman, Chu Heng naturally did not dare to go anywhere. He could only hide in the formation and wait for the situation to calm down, then he could join the Taishanman. What a good plan! Completely change your appearance and join another sect? Yang Chen sneered, and his voice made Viper and Sand Scorpion tremble. Completely changing their appearance, Chu Heng and the Taishaman wanted to make Chunyang Palace unable to raise their heads for a lifetime. Their vicious intentions could be seen. "You dare to insult my master, I want your head." As he said, Yang Chun twisted the neck of the Jedan stage master.